The story begins in a quiet village, where the setting sun cast its warm, golden light over the rooftops, casting long shadows on the bustling streets below. Despite the peaceful scene, an air of urgency filled the air as a man, standing at the village center, beat a large drum, his voice booming over the crowd. "Return to your homes quickly. It's almost dark, and the night brings danger," he warned, his voice laced with concern. He continued beating the drum, his steady rhythm demanding attention. "Burn incense in your homes tonight, and lock your doors tightly. Do not let the old black snake into your house." The villagers paused, their cheerful conversations fading into hushed whispers. Fear rippled through the crowd as the man continued. "Just 2 days ago, the black snake devoured 2 men at the mountain temple. One of them even a Taoist." His words sent a chill through the listeners, and they hurriedly gathered their belongings, eager to retreat indoors. Though the old black snake hadn't attacked anyone in the village recently, chickens and ducks had gone missing, vanishing without a trace. The villagers, anxious not to lose their animals, made sure to secure everything before the night fell. Outside the village, near the foot of the mountain temple, a father and son were gathering herbs in woven baskets. As they worked, the boy looked up at his father and said, "We should bring the chickens inside tonight. What if the black snake eats them?" The father nodded, agreeing silently. Losing the chickens would be a big loss, especially with winter approaching. They lifted their baskets onto their shoulders and quickly started their journey back to the village, leaving the temple behind them. Unbeknownst to them, someone inside the temple had overheard their conversation, the very creature the villagers feared. The old black snake, coiled tightly around a large stone statue, had listened intently. Its eyes gleamed with faint amusement as it realized that the old black snake they spoke of was none other than itself. As the snake slithered along the temple's cold walls, its long body weaving between the pillars, it wondered why the villagers considered it so terrifying. "And old?" the snake thought with a faint, wicked glint in its eyes. Did they really think of it as an ancient, fearsome creature? It paused, recalling the events from 2 days prior. Yes, it had eaten 2 people. That much was true. The memory resurfaced vividly. 2 days ago, a man had come sprinting up the temple steps, his breath ragged and desperate. He had been fleeing from a Taoist, who was furiously chasing after him. The Taoist had cultivated the man, intending to use him as a human pellet to enhance his own cultivation. But the man, having ingested many of the Taoist's precious herbs, had fled, terrified for his life. The man had rushed into the temple, collapsing before the large stone idol. Kneeling in desperation, he clasped his hands together and began to pray, his voice trembling as he begged the idol for protection. "Save me. Please save me," he had cried. But what could a stone statue do? At the time, the black snake, watching from the shadows, had not understood human language. But it could see the man's fear, his pain, the way his body shook in terror. The snake had pitied him, seeing him suffer. In its own way, it wanted to offer the man peace. And so, in a single, swift motion, the snake had devoured the man whole, ending his misery in one gulp. Some time later, the same Taoist stormed into the temple, furiously searching for the man he had been chasing. Upon seeing the black snake, his eyes blazed with rage. "You wretched beast! Spit him out! I've cultivated that man for 10 years, he bellowed, his voice echoing off the temple walls. The black snake, still coiled lazily around the stone statue, looked at the Taoist curiously. It couldn't yet fully understand human words, but from the man's tone and gestures, it seemed as if he, too, was in some kind of pain, just like the human before him. Wanting to bring peace to this suffering Taoist, the snake slithered forward and swallowed him whole, just as it had done with the man before. In the black snake's simple mind, it imagined the two of them now reunited, finding peace within its belly. At the time, the black snake hadn't thought much about it. But after consuming both the man and the Taoist, something remarkable happened. A surge of energy coursed through the snake's body, and for the first time, clarity dawned upon it. The snake had unknowingly absorbed their spiritual essence and gained a demonic core. And with that demonic core came intelligence. As its awareness blossomed, the black snake's mind opened to a new reality. It realized that the world was far more dangerous and terrifying than it had ever imagined. The snake reflected on the past and remembered a time when it had been chased by several humans dressed in dark robes. Only now did it understand they were from the infamous snake-catching sect a group of cultivators who specialized in hunting snakes like itself. The black snake recalled seeing them capture and kill a massive flower python, their power undeniable. The snake, now fully aware, understood that cultivators, humans who trained to gain spiritual power, were formidable foes. They progressed through stages of cultivation, beginning with the chi refining stage, followed by foundation establishment, core formation, and finally the nascent soul stage, where they could wield the very forces of heaven and earth. The black snake shuddered at the thought. It now realized that its past escapes from the snake catchers were nothing but lucky flukes. With this newfound intelligence, the black snake decided that survival was its only priority. Having gained an understanding of just how dangerous humans were, especially cultivators, it became determined to avoid any unnecessary risks. Hunting humans, it reasoned, was far too perilous, no matter how tempting the reward. After the two it had devoured at the temple, it vowed to steer clear of humans. Instead, it had resorted to stealing chickens and ducks from the nearby village, a safer option that helped it survive without drawing too much attention. However, in the present, as the black snake's stomach grumbled, it realized that the poultry from the village no longer satisfied its hunger. Worse, it was becoming increasingly difficult to steal unnoticed. Frustration crept in, and the snake's mind raced for a solution. Then it remembered something, a conversation it had overheard from the villagers. They had mentioned a wealthy family in Xinjia town that raised pigs. The idea sparked the snake's interest. Pigs were larger, and a single one might fill its belly for days. Determined, the black snake decided to head for Xinjia town. It slithered out of the temple, its body gliding smoothly over the stone floor. As it moved toward the entrance, its gaze fell upon a painting on the temple wall, a faded but beautiful depiction of an ancient story. The snake paused, staring at the artwork. It had heard humans give themselves names, an odd custom, but one that intrigued the snake. After a moment of contemplation, it decided that it, too, should have a name. The story painted on the wall was of Su Xian, a tale the snake had always liked, and the villagers had already been calling it the Old Black Snake. A slow grin spread across the snake's face, or what passed for a grin on a snake, as it decided on a fitting name for itself. From now on, it would be known as Su He. Night had fully descended on Xinjia town, casting long shadows across the village as its inhabitants rested in their homes. Su He, having slithered through the quiet streets, finally found the pig's den he had been searching for. His eyes gleamed with hunger as he peeked inside. The den was filled with several large pigs, and just the sight of them made his stomach rumble. Drool dripped from his open mouth as he glanced around cautiously, checking if any humans were nearby. Satisfied that the coast was clear, he raised his head and in one swift movement, devoured a pig whole. The pigs in the pen began to stir, with one particularly loud pig squealing in fear as it bolted away from Su He. Annoyed by the noise and not wanting to alert the humans, Su He lunged at the frightened pig, swallowing it in a single gulp. He continued feasting, devouring several more pigs until he felt bloated. Burping softly, Su He glanced at his engorged body, which was now filled with a mass of multiple pigs. He briefly wondered if he had overindulged, but with several hours until dawn, he decided to rest in the den and digest his meal. Time passed quietly, and Su He began to relax. However, just as he was settling in, he heard voices approaching from nearby. His body tensed, instinctively sensing danger. Opening his eyes, he saw several figures standing just outside the pig den. Without wasting a moment, Su He climbed up one of the wooden pillars, curling himself onto the roof beams to hide. From his vantage point, he watched as two men entered the den, carrying the limp body of a man dressed in black. The man in brown robes, who was supporting one end of the body, spoke first. Chun Fan stopped breathing, he said grimly. The other man, clad in blue, scoffed dismissively. Good riddance. A worthless guy like Chun Fan doesn't deserve to live. They tossed Chun Fan's lifeless body onto the straw-covered floor of the pig den and turned to leave. As they exited, the man in brown paused, looking around the barn with a puzzled expression. Strange, there seemed to be fewer pigs than before. He shook his head, though, and quickly brushed the thought aside, following his companion out. Su He, still hidden above, lowered his head cautiously to get a better look. His eyes focused on the body of Chun Fan, who appeared completely lifeless. The snake recalled overhearing that dead bodies brought bad luck, and he was just about to slink away when something alarming happened. Chun Fan's eyes shot open. Startled, Su-hei froze. His heart raced as he watched the supposed corpse slowly sit up, kneeling in the straw. Su-hei's mind raced, wondering if the man had turned into some kind of zombie. But what happened next was even more bizarre. Chun Fan began to wipe the dirt from his face, his expression shifting from confusion to triumph. He raised his head and let out a loud, maniacal laugh that echoed through the den. The air around him crackled with energy, and suddenly, waves of spiritual power burst from his body, swirling in a vortex around him. Su-hei's eyes widened. The body of Chun Fan had been possessed by an immortal soul. The man stood tall, his eyes glowing with determination. Chun Fan, have returned, he declared. I finally have the chance to be reincarnated. The immortal, also named Chun Fan, had merged with the memories of the original man. He saw everything. How the original Chun Fan had lived a life of humiliation, his engagement broken, his cultivation destroyed, and his dantian shattered. The immortal's eyes blazed with fury as he clenched his fists. Since I have taken over your body, I will avenge you. I will not spare a single soul who dared to insult or harm you. Su-hei, still perched on the roof beams, watched in stunned silence. The immortal Chun Fan spoke with fiery resolve, but the snake couldn't help but wonder. Who was he even talking to? Chun Fan stood up and inspected the condition of his newly inhabited body. His injuries were severe. If the immortal hadn't taken over, Chun Fan would have surely died. Meanwhile, Su-hei, who had been watching from his hidden perch, decided it was time to retreat. His heart raced as he prepared to slink away. But just as he was about to make his exit, Chun Fan glanced up and spotted him. Su-hei froze. He had been discovered. Panic surged through him. He had overheard Chun Fan talking about being an immortal and feared the worst. Was Chun Fan from the snake-catching sect? If he was, Su-hei knew he was as good as dead. His mind spun in terror, trying to figure out what to do next. But to Su-hei's surprise, Chun Fan barely reacted to his presence. Seeing that Su-hei was merely a low-tier spirit beast, Chun Fan dismissed him as unimportant. His focus remained on healing his injured body. Sitting down in the lotus position, Chun Fan began channeling his spiritual energy. He knew that a creature as weak as Su-hei posed no threat, and with just a small release of spiritual energy, he could scare the snake away if necessary. As Chun Fan settled into meditation, yellow spiritual energy began to swirl around him. Suddenly, a powerful tornado of energy erupted from his body, manifesting into a majestic dragon that coiled through the air. From the dragon's form, a cauldron materialized, etched with engravings of fierce beasts. Chun Fan let out a triumphant laugh. He hadn't expected the demon god cauldron, the supreme treasure of the demon race, to have reincarnated alongside his divine consciousness. Su-hei, still observing from the shadows, was terrified. His jaw hung open in disbelief as he mistook Chun Fan's display of power for a deadly spell aimed at capturing him. Sweat dripped from his head as his body trembled in fear. He had no idea what was really happening, only that if this was a snake catcher, he was in mortal danger. His mind raced with frantic thoughts. What if Chun Fan demanded compensation for the pigs he had eaten? What if Chun Fan roasted him alive and used his skin for some sinister purpose? The more Su-hei thought, the more his terror grew. Meanwhile, Chun Fan, lost in his meditative state, raised one hand and began reciting an ancient mantra. His voice dripped with ambition as he smiled darkly, vowing to conquer the world now that he had been reborn. Su-hei's panic reached a fever pitch. He couldn't sit still any longer. Desperate and fearing for his life, he made a reckless decision. Charging at Chun Fan from behind, Su-hei's massive body barreled through the pig den, reducing it to rubble in an instant. With his mouth wide open, Su-hei lunged forward and in one swift bite, swallowed Chun Fan whole. Chun Fan's meditative trance was shattered as he disappeared into the snake's jaws. Su-hei, not wasting another moment, slithered out of the village at lightning speed, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't care where he was going. He just needed to get as far away from Chunjiao Town as possible before anyone could realize what had happened. Inside Su-hei's belly, Chun Fan found himself drenched in the snake's internal fluids, his veins bulging with rage. His voice was laced with fury as he muttered to himself, "A lowly spirit beast dares to challenge me? I gave it a chance to flee, and this is how it repays me? It's courting death." With clenched fists, Chun Fan struck Su-hei's insides with a powerful punch. The impact sent shockwaves through Su-hei's body, causing the serpent to screech in agony. Blood spurted from Su-hei's mouth, and his belly convulsed under the relentless onslaught of Chun Fan's attacks. It was then that Suhei realized Chun Fan wasn't dead. Instead, the immortal was still casting spells from within his belly, creating chaos inside him. Chun Fan pressed on, widening the gap inside Suhei's belly to give himself room to maneuver. With every punch, every spell, he drew closer to Suhei's demonic core, the very essence of the snake's power. When Chun Fan finally reached the core, Suhei's fear escalated. The snake could feel his life slipping away as the immortal raised his hand toward the purple core, exerting his spiritual energy upon it. A small crack appeared on the surface of the core, and with it, the spiritual energy inside began to leak. Chun Fan wasted no time. He started absorbing the leaking energy, strengthening himself with each passing second. More cracks formed, and soon the core shattered completely. Suhei screamed in anguish as blood gushed from his mouth, his body tearing apart from the inside out. Writhing on the ground, Suhei's massive form thrashed violently, his last struggles throwing dust and debris into the air. His body collided with a nearby tree, and a sharp bark pierced his head. Suhei's vision blurred as his eyes lost their light. In those final moments, thoughts raced through his mind. Why did it have to end like this? He had formed his demonic core, gained intelligence. He had so much to live for. Tears welled up in his eyes as regret filled his heart. He shouldn't have come to this village. And then, darkness. Meanwhile, inside the now lifeless body of Suhei, Chun Fan was far from finished. With his spiritual energy depleted, he needed sustenance. The black snake's meat would do just fine. He began tearing into the flesh, devouring it to replenish his strength. As he consumed the snake's meat, he felt a surge of spiritual energy beneath his feet. The demon god cauldron, which was linked to Chun Fan's divine consciousness, suddenly appeared on its own. Chun Fan raised his hand to collect it. But before he could fully grasp what was happening, the cauldron emitted an immense amount of energy, gravitating toward the remnants of Suhei's demonic core. Blinding light filled the space, and Chun Fan shielded his eyes from the radiant glow. Golden energy poured out of the cauldron, and to Chun Fan's shock, it manifested into a massive spiritual dragon. His confusion deepened. The cauldron had absorbed the shattered fragments of Suhei's core. Why is the demon god cauldron helping Suhei? Chun Fan muttered in disbelief. Could Suhei have been more than just an ordinary spirit beast? As if to answer his question, the spiritual dragon opened its eyes, and an overwhelming surge of energy shot forth, enveloping Chun Fan. Pain racked his body as the golden energy began to disintegrate him from the inside out. Suhei's body, too, began to glow with the same golden light, pouring from his mouth, eyes, and the wounds that marred his flesh. Chun Fan writhed in agony as his body was torn apart by the spiritual energy, leaving no trace behind. Hours passed, and with the rising sun, both Chun Fan and Suhei's once mighty body had disintegrated, leaving only fragments behind. But something extraordinary happened. A small, delicate snake body formed from the remains of Suhei's massive form. Suhei, though unconscious, still had tears in his eyes. His massive demonic core and body were gone, replaced by this smaller, more fragile form. And yet, in the reflection of the golden energy still lingering in the air, his silhouette was no longer that of a lowly black snake. It was the reflection of the spiritual dragon that had devoured Chun Fan. One of the pigs, emboldened by its numbers, lunges at Suhei's tail, which has grown noticeably longer and more powerful since he consumed the demon god cauldron. The persistent nipping of the pig irritates him, and with a casual yet firm motion, Suhei gently lifts his tail, wrapping it around the pig's neck. His eyes narrow as he begins to choke the creature, growling, "I said stop!" The pig squeals in panic before scurrying away, realizing its life was mere moments from being snuffed out. Suhei watches it flee, his voice rising in anger. "I'll devour all of you." His eyes drift to his tail, now riddled with small bite marks from the pig's attacks. Annoyance flickers across his face as he mutters, "These wretched creatures." His frustration soon gives way to contemplation. "I should have been dead long ago." His thoughts wander back to the battle with the immortal, the moment his demon core was destroyed. Every demon knows the core is essential for cultivation, for life itself. But here he is alive, and not only alive, but growing stronger. How am I still here? How can I still cultivate without a core? Burying his head in his coiled body, Suhei lets out a long sigh of despair. Without the demon core, his future seemed bleak. Cultivation is impossible for a demon without one, or so he thought. Yet something gnaws at him, a growing realization. Wait, how am I still breathing? Suddenly, everything clicks into place. Suhei's eyes widen in astonishment. The demon god cauldron replaced my core. He instinctively looks down at his stomach, the usual place where a demon core would reside. Instead, he senses the demon god cauldron fused with his being, merged deep within him. Its presence thrums with an ancient, powerful energy like a heartbeat. So this is what saved me. As he ponders this revelation, Suhei's gaze sharpens, and something new stirs within him. His vision shifts. Into his shock, he can now see into his own body, the complex networks of energy and chi flowing through him. X-ray vision? He blinks, then focuses on a pig nearby. In an instant, he sees through the creature's skin, its internal organs laid bare before him. His mouth curls into a smirk. Divine perception. The ability was typically reserved for powerful human cultivators, yet now it is his to wield. Closing his eyes, he tests the newfound skill again and realizes that even in darkness, he can see the vital signs of creatures around him. Hunting will be easier now, he muses. Evading threats, effortless. When he reopens his eyes, another wave of insight hits him. Information, knowledge, flooding his mind. It reminds him of the wisdom he gained after devouring the two human cultivators. This time, however, it feels more profound. He can now clearly recall the cultivation paths and techniques of Chun Fan, whose essence he absorbed not too long ago. Suhei suddenly winces, clutching his head as a sharp pain pierces his mind. Too much, too fast. He knows he needs to control this influx of knowledge before it overwhelms him. Curling his body into a tight coil, he takes a deep breath, trying to calm his thoughts. This might heal me, he mutters, remembering how Chun Fan meditated. Though unsure of the exact process, Suhei begins to replicate Chun Fan's cultivation technique, hoping it will ease the pain and stabilize his chaotic energy. Echoing the chant that Chun Fan would recite, "Heaven and earth are the chessboard, and all beings are the pieces," Suhei begins to mutter the words under his breath. To his surprise, as he repeats the mantra, a faint spiritual energy stirs from within the demon god cauldron. Slowly but surely, the energy spreads, resonating with the surrounding area. The spiritual energy from the environment responds in kind, swirling toward him, mending his injuries as it envelopes his form. His wounds, particularly the bite marks on his tail, visibly begin to close. Suhei watches in amazement, marveling at the effectiveness of this ancient method. After only a few moments of practice, his body feels invigorated, brimming with spiritual energy, as though he had consumed an entire field of spiritual herbs. He coils himself tighter, his form resembling a protective embrace. Meditation isn't just for cultivation, he muses aloud. It heals as well, a side effect, but a powerful one. For a brief moment he pauses, his thoughts turning back to his shattered demon core. Without it, demons are incapable of storing spiritual energy. Yet, as the demon god cauldron pulses within him, he wonders, could it have taken the place of my core? The thought lingers for only a moment before Suhei shakes his head, dismissing it. He decides to leave such questions for later. Right now, the most important thing is finding a suitable location to rest and cultivate further. His instincts tell him not to linger here too long. In the background, one of the pigs, seemingly unaware of the strange occurrence, continues to snuffle around, unperturbed. Suhei eyes the pig with mild amusement, deciding that before he embarks on his cultivation journey, he should indulge himself. I can grow stronger over time, he reminds himself, but no need to rush into battles with humans just yet. With a swift motion, Suhei pounces on the pigs, feasting until his hunger is sated and his energy fully restored. After his meal, the scene transitions to a serene river, where Suhei bathes himself, using a small rabbit as a makeshift cloth to scrub his scales clean. Since his enlightenment through the human pellets, new insights have been steadily surfacing in his mind. The revelations are growing more frequent and intense, and he can feel his understanding deepening each day, particularly since absorbing Chun Fan. One morning, after several days of meditation and reflection, a profound realization strikes him. He suddenly comprehends the cultivation system that humans speak of with such reverence. It finally makes sense, everything falls into place. Not only does the human cultivation system have stages, but so does the cultivation of demon beasts like him. The stages are strikingly similar, categorized into distinct levels of progression: the spiritual stage, the foundation establishment stage, the core formation stage, and finally, the nascent soul stage. Suhei currently stands at the peak of the first spiritual stage, which corresponds to the pinnacle of the human chi refining stage. His aspirations, however, extend far beyond this. He dreams of becoming a legendary spiritual beast, one capable of splitting heaven and earth, and this dream fuels a deep yearning within him. It's a desire not just for power, but for freedom. Freedom from his haunting past and the limitations that have bound him for so long. He knows that the only path to such greatness lies in cultivation. Within the seclusion of his cave, spiritual energy pulses from his coiled form as he recites Chun Fan's mantra. The days of practice have not been wasted. Suhei has realized that the mysterious arts he's learned offer far more than mere healing. They strengthen his body, enhance his physique, and purify his meridians, eliminating impurities with each cycle of energy. His skin has shed in the process, a natural transformation that leaves him stronger, yet something bothers him. He strikes the cave wall with his tail, venting his frustration. A week has passed, and while I've changed greatly, why have I shrunk so much? His horns have lengthened, his scales have hardened, giving him an aura of majesty. Yet, despite these improvements, his size has baffled him. He's gone from a proud 30 centimeters to a mere 6. After shedding my skin, I should have grown larger, not smaller. His voice echoes through the cave. A bird lands beside him, seemingly unaware of Suhei's presence. He perceives its casual landing as mockery, a final straw that sends his temper flaring. With a swift motion, his tail strikes, killing the bird in an instant. As he consumes it, he grumbles, sighs aside, "My power and speed have grown. Even with this smaller form, I am far more flexible, enough to take down larger prey now." Satisfied, Suhei senses the demon god cauldron within him, realizing fully that it has become his new demon core. Spiritual energy steadily accumulates within it, preparing him for an inevitable breakthrough. Yet there's a problem. His energy consumption has become excessive. Though Chun Fan's arts allow him to absorb spiritual energy from heaven and earth, it is no longer enough to sustain his cultivation. The natural absorption is too slow. He needs more. He needs resources to fuel his next stage. Without them, progress will grind to a halt. As he ponders this, Suhei gazes out of his cave and spots a wild boar in a nearby field, feasting on a watermelon. Suhei considers the wild boar before him. Though large and somewhat dangerous, he is now at the peak of the first spiritual stage, and according to the cultivation system, this boar should be no match for him. With its undeveloped intelligence and lack of cultivation, he feels confident that a properly executed approach will make it a simple and delicious meal. Carefully, Suhei gathers small rocks with his tail and mouth, ready to strike. Meanwhile, the boar remains oblivious, continuing to feast on the watermelons scattered across the field. Suhei inches closer, his heart racing with excitement. But just as he's about to launch his attack, he freezes in place, the rock falling from his mouth. The wild boar turns, its fierce eyes locked onto him, and to his shock, its body radiates spiritual energy. Suhei tries to play it off, encouraging the boar to keep eating, but the beast roars thunderously in response and charges at him. Panic sets in as he bolts, fleeing from the terrifying creature. Why is this boar so powerful, he wonders, barely dodging the beast's attacks. But soon, he's cornered with no escape in sight. Realizing he must fight to survive, Suhei prepares to face the boar head-on. Using the rocks he had gathered, he hurls them at the boar with incredible speed, hoping to at least slow it down. To his surprise, the rocks strike with such force that they obliterate the boar, leaving its body in ruins. Suhei stands in disbelief, watching as the creature collapses in a lifeless heap. Did I just kill it with one strike? He questions his own strength, amazed at the power he unleashed. However, recalling his previous encounters with cunning pigs, Suhei grows suspicious. It could be playing dead, he mutters. To be sure, he throws more rocks at the boar's limp body, confirming its death. Only then does he breathe a sigh of relief, aware of how close he came to danger. Determined not to take any chances, Suhei resolves to dismember the boar, separating its head and limbs from its torso. As he begins to feast on the wild boar's flesh, He notes how much firmer the meat is compared to that of ordinary pigs. It also has a distinct flavor, different from what he expected. But something's wrong. Suddenly, he spits the meat out, disgusted. This isn't an ordinary wild boar. It's a pig demon. Realization dawns on him, and he feels unsettled. Demon cores, he recalls, are dangerous. They contain violent spiritual energy, and consuming them raw would lead to an explosive death. Suhei shakes his head in frustration. He knows that to properly absorb a demon core, it must be refined into a pill, but he has no knowledge of how to do that. Suddenly, Suhei pauses, contemplating the nature of wild beasts like tigers that consume their prey whole, including both the body and the core. This raises an intriguing question. If they were to eat a raw demon core, wouldn't they explode from the violent energy within? Surely, if that were the case, these powerful beasts would have gone extinct long ago. A spark of realization brightens Suhei's expression as he recognizes that his understanding of the demon core's dangers comes primarily from human teachings. Perhaps, due to the fundamental differences in physiology between humans and beasts, he might be able to consume a raw demon core without dire consequences. With newfound determination, Suhei opens his mouth wide, preparing to swallow the demon core. The size difference presents a challenge, and he struggles momentarily before finally managing to consume it whole. Almost instantly, a brilliant light radiates from his stomach, and he exclaims, "It's getting hot." The demon god cauldron within him begins to absorb the core at an astonishing rate, filling rapidly. An overwhelming surge of spiritual energy courses through him, and he shouts in exhilaration, "I'm breaking through." In that moment, he feels a powerful transformation as he successfully reaches the second spiritual stage. His body is covered in spiked scales, and he marvels at how two of those scales have turned a striking golden hue. To test his newfound strength, he strikes a nearby rock, shattering it effortlessly with a single blow. The iron-like quality of his scales astounds him, a testament to his incredible progress. However, his moment of triumph is abruptly interrupted. Something catches his attention, and as he turns, he spots a human figure wielding a weapon, causing him to break into a cold sweat. Suhei narrows his eyes as the boy lifts his weapon, pointing it directly at him. Is he about to attack? Suhei wonders, studying the boy's stance and questioning if the young human might possess the abilities of a cultivator. For a brief moment, a memory of Chun Fan flashes in his mind, prompting him to consider whether this boy shares any of Chun Fan's strength or resolve. Without warning, the boy lunges, attempting to stab Suhei. Instinctively, the black snake coils and adopts a defensive posture, sensing the imminent danger. With a swift and precise flick of his tail, Suhei shatters the boy's weapon into pieces. Seizing the moment, Suhei mutters to himself, "Humans are truly frightening." He quickly flees, not wanting to stick around in case the boy's companions arrive. Meanwhile, the boy, clearly shaken, exhales in relief. Having narrowly escaped a dangerous situation, he calls out to his father, informing him that the old black snake has killed and consumed the demonic pig beast, the very creature responsible for his mother's death. The boy adds, with a mixture of awe and gratitude, that the black snake spared his life. His father, confused by the situation, inquires further, but the boy is too overwhelmed to explain in detail. The scene shifts to a dense forest, where Suhei slithers up a rugged mountain path. As he climbs the staircase, his mind races, processing the strange encounter. He pauses for a moment, realizing no one is pursuing him. His thoughts turn back to the boy, pondering the child's unusual nature. That was no ordinary human, Suhei reflects. Continuing his ascent, Suhei chastises himself. How can a spirit beast like me, who aspires to grow strong enough to split the heavens, be intimidated by a mere boy? He scoffs at the notion, determined to rid himself of such foolish doubts. Finally reaching the mountain statue temple, Suhei decides to pay his respects, seeking solace and clarity. The temple had long been the site of his enlightenment, a place he associated with great fortune. Upon entering, memories flood his mind. He recalls hearing that possessing a demon heart can be a significant hindrance to spiritual cultivation. Devotion and discipline are essential for overcoming this obstacle, he reminds himself. Using his tail, Suhei carefully balances 3 incense sticks, lighting them as he approaches the massive statue. With a deep breath, he calls out to the mountain statue, announcing his return and seeking guidance. Just then, a delightful aroma wafts through the air, interrupting his prayers. Suhei's eyes widen in astonishment as he approaches the source of the smell. What is this? He wonders. A feast of delectable dishes lies before him, offerings placed in front of the mountain temple statue. Suhei's curiosity quickly turns to amusement. Surely, the statue doesn't need this food, he reasons, licking his lips. It would be a waste to let such a fine meal spoil, Suhei thinks. Besides, by tasting these offerings, I'm only making my devotion more genuine, right? With that, he eagerly begins to devour the dishes, savoring each bite, convinced that his actions are justified. After finishing his meal, Suhei settles back down, this time focusing on the mountain statue. He begins to pray, earnestly asking for blessings to rid himself of the demon heart that weighs him down and to succeed in his cultivation journey. As his eyes close, he whispers a request for strength and a good life. But just as his thoughts begin to align, something sharp disrupts the calm. Voices, harsh and frantic, reach his ears. Suhei's eyes snap open as he hears someone shout, mentioning a girl and asking where she intends to run. Instinctively, Suhei realizes that trouble is drawing near. Cries for help echo into the temple. The next moment, a young woman bursts through the entrance, desperation written on her face, followed by a group of men. Suhei, feeling trapped, swiftly conceals himself behind the mountain statue, his body pressed low against the floor. What's going on? He wonders, his mind racing. As he peeks from his hiding spot, one of the men, a haughty figure, commands the rest of the group to stay outside, hinting with a sneer that he intends to have some fun with the girl. His followers address him as young Master Chiu, affirming his authority. Suhei assesses the situation, his body coiled tightly behind the statue. Using his perception ability, he scans the temple structure, searching for an escape route. To his dismay, he realizes there's only one exit, where the thugs are currently stationed. Escape without detection? Impossible. Through his heightened senses, Suhei begins to observe young Master Chiu closely. The arrogant man circles the girl like a predator, a dangerous glint in his eyes. No woman has ever defied me once I've set my sights on her, Chiu sneers. The girl, trembling, clutches a knife, her voice shaking as she warns him to stay away. This only enrages Chiu further. His voice turns cold. Choose your next words carefully, or you'll suffer a fate worse than death. Her grip tightens around the knife as she retorts, I might not be able to kill you, but I can end my own life before you get what you want. Watching the scene unfold, Suhei's memory stirs. The name young Master Chiu rings a bell. Wasn't he the one from the pig pen? The one responsible for beating Fan to death? A familiar sense of disgust crawls up Suhei's spine as he watches the man's demeanor. Intrigued but mostly baffled by human nature, Suhei muses on how unpredictable humans are with their desires. Are humans always this strange? He wonders, recalling his own nature as a spirit beast, where such urges follow the rhythms of the seasons. Unlike this chaotic display, why would a creature like Chiu be so fixated on such a fragile woman? Meanwhile, young Master Chiu, clearly enjoying the power he wields, steps closer to the woman. His knife gleams under the dim light as he taunts her. Trying to take your own life? You dare threaten me? No matter. I'll teach you a lesson before you meet your end. Suhei continues to watch from behind the statue, noting Chiu's strength, but also quickly concluding that the man severely lacks intelligence. Strength without wisdom, Suhei muses, is no different from a wild boar. The woman glares at young Master Chiu with unrelenting fury. You forced me to end my engagement, she spits, her voice quivering with rage. You murdered my fiancé, Chun Fan. Even in death, I will never let you escape. I'll haunt you as a ghost until the end of time. Her vow rings through the temple, a fierce declaration of her hatred. Meanwhile, Suhei, still hidden behind the mountain statue, misinterprets the situation. He continues nibbling at the last of the offerings, oblivious to the gravity of the conflict. Why are humans always so dramatic over these things? He muses, completely misunderstanding the woman's plight. If it's not about food, why resort to violence? With a sigh, he silently suggests that the mountain statue should simply bless them both and send them on their way so he can return to his prayers in peace. Suddenly, there's a sharp crack. One of the statue's hands breaks off, crashing to the ground with a loud thud. The sound causes both young Master Chiu and the woman to freeze, their eyes snapping toward the statue in shock. For a moment, silence blankets the temple. Then, Young Master Chio narrows his eyes and shouts, "Who's hiding behind the statue? Show yourself." Meanwhile, the woman, still trembling, interprets the statue's movement as a divine intervention. She rushes toward it, falling to her knees before it, praying desperately for salvation. "Please save me," she cries. To her horror and astonishment, Suhei slowly emerges from behind the statue, his black scales gleaming under the dim light. His sinuous, towering form sends shivers through the room. The woman screams in terror. "A spirit beast!" she exclaims, stumbling back. Young Master Chio, momentarily confused, looks around frantically. A spirit beast? Where? He steps forward, knife still in hand, but the woman, in her panic, accidentally collides with him, and the blade plunges into her side. There's a brief moment of stunned silence. Young Master Chio gasps, eyes wide with horror, as he realizes he's just stabbed the woman. I didn't mean to." Outside, the minions hear the commotion and rush into the temple. "What's going on, young master? Have you finished having your fun?" One of them asks with a sly grin. But young Master Chio, shaken, shouts, "There's a spirit beast in here. It ruined everything." His frustration mounts as he demands the creature leave immediately. Suhei, still watching the scene unfold, is stunned. "A spirit beast? Me?" His black scales shimmer, and suddenly, all attention is on him. The minions glance around nervously, gripping their weapons tighter. "I'm an outer disciple of the snake-catching sect," young Master Chio announces, his voice shaking slightly but laced with arrogance. "You think you can frighten me, spirit beast?" Suhei breaks into a sweat. "Snake-catching sect? I don't want to be caught." Panic begins to set in, and he tries to remain as still as possible, hoping they might forget about him. But when no response comes from Suhei, young Master Chio commands his minions, "Check behind the statue. Find that snake." Without hesitation, the minions approach the statue cautiously, weapons drawn. "Come out, beast!" one of them shouts, their voices betraying their fear. Suhei, now cornered, feels his heart racing. "I have to fight. I don't want to, but I have no choice." His survival instincts kick in. Better to fight than to be caught. In an instant, Suhei reveals himself in full, his massive form and sharp fangs gleaming. He hisses fiercely, his dark aura exuding a menacing presence. The minions recoil in terror. It really is a spirit beast. A snake spirit beast. Young Master Chio, now more cautious but still determined, orders them, "It's just a small creature. Don't let it intimidate you." But as Suhei coils up, ready to strike, even young Master Chio feels the weight of fear creeping in. This isn't just any snake. Young Master Chio begins to gather spiritual energy in his palm, his expression tense as he commands his minions, "Restrain the spirit beast. I'll finish it with a snake-catching sect's air-splitting palm." His technique requires time to gather power, and he's confident his minions will handle Suhei long enough for him to unleash it. The promise of a reward fills the minions with reckless determination. They charge at Suhei, fully believing that their young master, a disciple of the snake-catching sect, is unbeatable. Suhei, however, realizes he must act quickly before Chio's energy gathers. "This is my only chance," he thinks, his cold eyes narrowing as he prepares for battle. In one powerful swing of his tail, he strikes the minions, sending them flying with effortless strength. One by one, they fall like leaves in the wind. Suhei blinks in surprise, marveling at how weak these so-called warriors are. "That was easier than I thought," he mutters, almost disappointed. Meanwhile, young Master Chio watches in horror, his confidence crumbling as he perceives Suhei not as a mere snake, but as a dark, looming figure emanating a deathly aura. Terror overtakes him. Without a second thought, young Master Chio turns on his heel and flees. "I'll alert the snake catchers," he shouts, his voice cracking as he bolts for the exit. Suhei pauses, stunned. Running away? Why wasn't he finishing his technique? But then young Master Chio's words sink in. He plans to call for reinforcements, and the snake-catching sect's leader would turn Suhei into a pill. The thought sends a cold shiver down Suhei's spine. "I can't let him get away." With swift precision, Suhei coils his body and lashes out, his tail cutting through the air like a blade. In one decisive strike, he delivers a fatal blow to young Master Chio, his head snapping back with a sickening crack. The young master falls lifeless to the ground. Suhei exhales deeply, relieved that the fight ended before the real danger could unfold. He chose to run instead of fight, he mutters, still processing how close he came to facing a dangerous spiritual technique. As Suhei looks over the bodies strewn across the temple floor, he contemplates whether this entire situation was brought on by his earlier actions, stealing the tribute offerings from the mountain statue. Could the statue be angry with me? He wonders. Perhaps the deity had a hand in orchestrating these events as a form of punishment. Feeling a strange sense of guilt, Suhei decides to make an offering of his own. Using his tail, he carefully places the bodies of young Master Chiu and his followers before the mountain statue, balancing incense sticks beside them. He bows his head in a rare display of humility. Great deity, please accept these as my tribute. I hope this will calm your anger, he whispers, hoping that his gesture would appease the statue's wrath. As he prays, Suhei begins to ponder deeper. Maybe the mountain statue is trying to push me to cultivate faster. He suddenly feels a surge of motivation, realizing that his path to becoming a formidable beast would not be easy. I must endure, he tells himself. Only through hardship will I become strong enough to split the heavens. With newfound resolve, Suhei slithers out of the temple, glancing back at the towering statue one last time. I'll return to my cave. It's time to focus on cultivation. A week passes. A radiant glow emanates from Suhei's mountain cave as he trains relentlessly. Yet, despite his efforts, the progress is slower than he hoped. Even after a week of practice, I haven't filled the second layer of spiritual mist, he grumbles, frustrated. The demon statue cauldron remains half full, and his cultivation seems stagnant. Suhei reflects on his daily routine, noting that the small beasts he hunts aren't enough to fuel his growth. These creatures don't even satisfy my hunger, let alone help me cultivate. His body craves more substantial energy to reach the next level. Suhei muses to himself as he slithers through the forest. It would be nice to stumble upon another pig demon to eat. He glances at the empty bird-catching trap he set earlier, sighing in disappointment. His stomach rumbles, reminding him that it's been far too long since he's caught anything substantial. Even the birds are avoiding me these days. Trying to lift his spirits, Suhei recalls an old saying, "Wait long enough, and the rabbit will come to you." He chuckles, thinking maybe the same principle applies to pigs. But where are they? Where's all the prey? His frustration grows as he wonders why no demon pigs or wild animals have crossed his path recently. Cultivating has become a challenge with such a meager diet. His thoughts take a turn. If a pig eats a melon, and I eat the pig, does that mean I can just eat the melon instead? Amused by his own reasoning, Suhei almost misses the sight of a boy walking with his father nearby. His curiosity piqued, Suhei pauses, hidden in the bushes, observing them closely. The boy excitedly tells his father about the river flooding this year, leading to an abundance of fish. Suhei's interest is instantly captured, and his eyes gleam. Fish! His mouth waters at the thought. The boy suddenly stops, his gaze locking directly on Suhei's hiding spot. Wait, can he see me? Suhei's heart skips a beat, surprised that the boy noticed him so easily. Without warning, the boy grabs a bag and dashes towards Suhei. The father calls after him, confused, but the boy keeps running, determined. What's this boy up to? Suhei quickly climbs a nearby tree, deciding it's safer to stay out of sight. When the boy reaches the base of the tree, he sets the bag down and calls out, "I'll leave this here for you," before running back toward his father. Suhei watches in confusion, his tail twitching. A gift? Curiosity gets the better of him, and Suhei descends from the tree to inspect the bag. Inside, live fish wriggle and flop around. His stomach growls again as he stares at the prize. Surely this must be a trap. He cautiously takes one fish in his mouth, hesitating for a moment. What if it's poisoned? Suhei examines the fish carefully, but, seeing it still wriggling, decides to give it a try. He chews thoughtfully, nodding in approval. Not bad. Actually, quite good. One fish turns into two, then three, and soon the entire bag is empty. As he licks his lips, the boy returns from the distance, beaming. The old black snake really likes fish, huh? Just then, a voice calls out to the boy. Hey, have you seen the black snake recently? A tall man, his face obscured by a scarf and hat, steps out from the shadows, approaching the boy. The boy, startled, looks up at the man, unsure how to answer. The atmosphere suddenly feels tense. Upon noticing the golden plate on the man's waist, the boy realizes they are snake catchers from the infamous snake-catching sect, here to capture the old black snake. The man, his eyes cold and calculating, asks the boy again about the snake, but the boy remains silent, feigning ignorance. This leads a man to suspect that the boy might be mute. After a tense pause, the boy finally replies, stating he has never encountered the old black snake. At this point, the man's companion, also clad in black, addresses him as Senior Brother Ding and informs him that the boy knows nothing and is of no use. Suddenly, a commotion erupts from the top of a nearby hill. Several crows take flight, their cries piercing the air, drawing the attention of the two men and the boy. Puzzled by the disturbance, the snake catchers decide to investigate. One of them speculates that the commotion could be the old black snake, prompting the boy to inwardly wish for the snake to escape their clutches. However, before they can ascend the hill, they freeze at the sound of a voice echoing through the valley, claiming that the old black snake had consumed someone in the river. The two men, interpreting this as a sign of the snake's presence in the water, dash towards the river, determined not to let it slip away. The boy chuckles softly, confident that the old black snake is still feasting on the fish he provided earlier. There's no way it could be in the river, he thinks. Meanwhile, at the summit of the hill, where the crows had been cawing, several broken eggs lay scattered across the ground. Suhei had made his narrow escape, cursing the foolish birds that caused the chaos, even pecking him on the head in their frenzy. He shook his head, irritated but focused on his survival. He pondered how he had once again narrowly evaded capture by the snake-catching sect, who were now falsely accusing him of consuming people in the river. Suhei mused on the strange behavior of the boy, wondering why the boy had claimed never to have seen him before. But after a moment's thought, he dismissed it. Human behavior was too bizarre and unpredictable for him to bother understanding. He had bigger concerns now. The snake catchers were hunting him, and they were relentless. He resolved that he could no longer linger in the area and would have to avoid this region entirely if he wanted to ensure his survival. Near the riverbank, Suhei decided that his best course of action was to escape to the mountains on the opposite side. He believed the mountains would provide a safe haven for at least a few months, a place where he could focus on his cultivation away from human interference. As he slipped into the river and began swimming across, his mind wandered. He noted with some dread that winter was approaching in 3 months. Without a reliable source of food, his cultivation progress would be severely hindered during the cold season. Suddenly, a large figure emerged in the water ahead of him, sending ripples through the river. Suhei's eyes widened, and before he could fully process the sight, a massive fish lunged at him, its mouth wide open, attempting to swallow him whole. Not again! Suhei cursed his misfortune as the monstrous fish loomed closer, its dark silhouette growing larger by the second. Suhei quickly leaped aside, wondering why such fearsome creatures inhabited this river. Submerging his head underwater to get a better look, he realized the beast pursuing him was a giant eel. Its serpentine form explained why it had been mistaken for him, the old black snake, in the first place, and why it was blamed for the disappearances in the river. However, something caught his attention. The eel was severely injured, likely from a fierce confrontation with the snake catchers. Suhei pondered why the eel had attacked him without provocation while he was merely passing through. It wasn't until their eyes met that he understood. The eel was not fleeing. It was trying to regain its strength by devouring him. With a grin, Suhei considered confronting the beast, seeing it as a potential source of sustenance for the cold months ahead. However, caution soon tempered his eagerness. This creature had evaded the snake catchers, a sign of its formidable strength. The risk was too great, and Suhei quickly prioritized his own survival. Just as he made his decision to escape, the eel lunged at him from behind, intent on swallowing him whole. Suhei noted the creature's relentless determination, but with a swift maneuver, he dodged the attack, swimming to the side just as the eel crashed headfirst into the riverbank. As Suhei attempted to flee again, he couldn't help but admire the eel's tenacity, though his own exhaustion was creeping in. Determined to end this struggle, Suhei summoned all his strength and decided to target the eel's vulnerable, wounded abdomen, hoping to find a way out. Shifting into his battle form, Suhei's body swelled, growing larger than usual. With a powerful strike, he slammed his tail into the eel's weakened abdomen, eliciting a painful shriek from the creature. Biting into its flesh, he recoiled at its slimy texture and peculiar odor. But then, something unexpected happened. His mouth filled with heat. "Ha!" Suhei exclaimed, bewildered. How could there be fire at the river's bottom? As he looked around, he noticed the water itself seemed to ignite, though they were submerged. Confusion filled him. How could this be happening underwater? The eel, undeterred, prepared for another charge, its maw wide open, poised to devour him. Suhei, sensing something strange, questioned if he was seeing an illusion. Recalling Chun Fan's teachings on illusions, Suhei knew he had to remain calm. He speculated that the eel's mucus might be causing these hallucinations, further clouding his judgment. As the eel drew ever closer, Suhei resolved to follow the advice of Chun Fan. Control the mind, shatter the illusion. Curling his body tightly, Suhei began to concentrate all his spiritual energy into a single point, his thoughts focused solely on survival. He recited the incantation of the demon god cauldron, envisioning heaven and earth as the chessboard, with all living beings as mere pieces. With a roar that echoed even underwater, Suhei commanded the illusion to shatter. The energy surged from his core, and the demon god cauldron within him manifested into the form of a magnificent dragon, tearing through the false reality. Suhei was filled with awe, having successfully shattered the illusion, but his triumph was short-lived. Mere inches away from him, the massive eel was still lunging to devour him. In a moment of desperation, Suhei closed his eyes, knowing escape was impossible. Instinctively, he lashed out with his tail, bracing for the worst. To his astonishment, his tail, reinforced by golden scales tougher than iron, sliced the eel clean in half. Opening his eyes, Suhei was taken aback by the sight of the eel's body, now severed by his own strike. He stood in disbelief, contemplating the sheer strength his tail had gained. His thoughts drifted to the potential of his golden scales. If further refined, they could render him invincible. But he quickly dismissed such prideful thinking, attributing his victory to luck. The eel had already been gravely injured when it collided with the scales. Caution, he reminded himself, was still essential. Determined to avoid unnecessary risk, Suhei decided it was best to retreat. He needed to hide in the mountains, where he could recover and plan his next moves. The scene shifted to a quiet spot on the opposite side of the mountain, where Suhei had already processed and packaged the eel's meat. He estimated this supply would sustain him for several months of cultivation. Holding the demon core of the eel in his hands, he felt confident that with this, he could push himself to the third spiritual stage. While preparing to consume the demon core, Suhei discovered something else, a golden plate embedded within the eel's body. He paused, speculating that the eel's last meal must have been one of the snake catchers. Bowing his head slightly, Suhei paid his respects to the eel. In its own way, the eel had helped him overcome not only the beast, but his human foes as well. It was, after all, the natural order of life. "I will not let your sacrifice go to waste," Suhei murmured to the eel. "Every part of you will be used." He reassured the fallen creature that even its demon core would serve a purpose. However, as he attempted to swallow the core, he realized it was far too large for him to consume in one go. At that moment, Suhei became acutely aware of the approaching danger. The snake catchers would soon be upon him. Hastily, he secured the eel's meat to his tail and clenched the demon core between his teeth, deciding to refine it later when he reached a safer place in the mountains. Suddenly, the snake catchers arrived at the scene, their voices echoing through the trees. From their conversation, Suhei realized they had pieced together the situation. Initially, they had been confused by how the old black snake had managed to escape so swiftly in the river. But now, it was clear. The water beast that had attacked someone in the river wasn't the old black snake. It had been the black snake that fought and defeated the water beast. One of the snake catchers suggested pursuing the old black snake further into the mountains, but another quickly countered. He explained that the territory ahead belonged to the Iron Bear, a formidable beast residing at the peak of the third spiritual stage. They couldn't afford to underestimate it. Moreover, the mountains were vast, and the forest thick, meaning their search for the old black snake could take months. Worse, they might cross paths with the bear instead. The second snake catcher then inquired if Senior Brother Ding had heard the rumors. The old black snake had recently consumed an alchemist and his human companion, both of whom had been cultivating for many years. This suggested that the medicinal properties of that human were still within the snake, offering a rare opportunity. If Senior Brother Ding could obtain the snake's remains, it might finally push him past the third chi refinement stage where he had long been stuck. Before the second could elaborate, Senior Brother Ding raised his hand in caution. "It's too risky," he warned. "Venturing into the mountains at this time, with only the two of them, would likely lead to heavy losses. They would bide their time and wait until winter set in fully. Once the mountains were blanketed in snow and the bears, snakes, and other beasts entered hibernation, they could make their move." patience would bring them profit. Meanwhile, Suhei had discovered a cozy cave nestled deep within the mountains. He relished its warmth and comfort, noting how it provided the perfect refuge for him to hide and cultivate. At the cave's entrance, he hung the eel meat to dry, already imagining it sustaining him through the long winter months. He decided to focus on cultivation after taking some much-needed rest. And so, 2 months passed. Winter had fully arrived, and snow blanketed the forest in thick layers of white. Suhei was surprised by how much more challenging it was to advance from the second to the third level of spiritual cultivation compared to his initial breakthroughs. Observing his tail, he remarked on the progress he had made. Through refining the demonic core, blood, and meat he had acquired from the eel, he had strengthened himself, though he still hadn't broken through to the third level. Despite days of continued cultivation, the breakthrough remained elusive. Nonetheless, Suhei felt a sense of minor achievement. 3 additional pieces of golden scale had emerged on his tail, their luster gleaming even in the dim light of his cave. Utilizing his divine sensibility, he inspected the demon statue cauldron within him. It was brimming with spiritual energy, an indication that he had reached the peak of the second level of cultivation. Suhei believed that with the right opportunity, he would finally break through to the third level. The scene then shifts to the snowy forest, where he struggles to relocate with what remains of his dwindling eel meat supply. His body feels stiff from the cold, and he comments on how the harsh winter is sapping his strength. Realizing that he's running out of both time and food, Suhei reluctantly concludes that hibernation is his only option. He resolves to enter a deep sleep and wait until spring to venture out of the mountains in search of more sustenance for his cultivation. Meanwhile, the focus shifts to the snake catchers. They are now speaking with several villagers from a remote mountain settlement, offering golden coins to anyone who helps them locate the old black snake. One villager, eager to secure the reward, assures the snake catchers that their village, known as Snake Village, is renowned for its expertise in hunting and capturing serpents. To aid in their search, they have 2 dogs specially trained to detect the scent of snakes. The snake catchers, pressing for time, urge the villagers to act swiftly in tracking down the elusive old black snake. As the villagers prepare for the hunt, one of them mutters disdainfully about the arrogance of the snake catchers. Another villager defends them, pointing out that the snake catchers possess real skill and are simply doing their job. He adds that his son, Xiao Nui, has a passion for learning and treasures an old, discarded book like a rare gem. The payment from the snake catchers, he explains, could help him enroll his son in a prestigious sect, bringing him great joy and securing his son's future. Suddenly, the dogs begin barking excitedly, signaling that they've found something. One villager questions how the dogs could have located a snake pit so quickly, but nonetheless, they inform the snake catchers, suggesting that the hole might belong to the old black snake. The snake catchers move in to investigate. As the group approaches, the scene cuts back to Suhei, who is in a state of panic. Realizing that the snake catchers have returned with reinforcements and that the dog's keen sense of smell has led them directly to him, he feels the cold biting at his body, leaving him stiff and vulnerable. Escape seems impossible. His body, weighed down by the winter's chill, isn't fast or agile enough to flee. He knows that if he doesn't act soon, he will be captured. As the snake catchers survey the area, one villager eagerly proclaims that they will surely receive their reward for finding the old black snake. But just as their hopes rise, the snake catchers stop, puzzled. One of them steps forward and declares that the scent the dogs have been following doesn't belong to the old black snake. It belongs to the iron bear. The villagers are stunned. One insists that the dogs have never been wrong before, but the snake catchers dismiss their claims, questioning the villagers' supposed expertise. The villagers soon spotted a large hole resembling a cave, which the snake catchers immediately associated with the territory of the mountain iron bear. Without hesitation, they instructed the villagers to enter the cave in search of the old black snake. Meanwhile, Suhei, hidden away, breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for his careful preparation. He silently praised himself for not only blocking the entrance with stones, but also for covering it with branches and masking his scent with bear feces. In his mind, it was sheer luck that had kept him hidden thus far. As the villagers entered the cave, Suhei silently reassured himself. He had dug a 20-meter deep tunnel, believing that it would be nearly impossible for the snake catchers to detect his presence. Yet, he knew he couldn't afford to be complacent. Urging himself to stay focused, he began circulating his energy, desperately trying to regain his body heat as a precaution against the cold. Outside the cave, the snake catchers stood at the entrance, surveying the area with quiet satisfaction. One of them commented that despite the depth of the hole, it was unmistakably a snake pit, a clear indication that they were closing in on Suhei's location. Another catcher sneered, suggesting that since their goal had been achieved, the villagers, whom they disdainfully referred to as idiots, were no longer needed. He casually remarked that fewer survivors meant less money to distribute when the mission was complete. The scene shifted to the villagers, who stood uneasily at the cave's entrance, looking around warily. Unbeknownst to them, one of the snake catchers was devising a cruel plan. He intended to lure the demon bear out of hiding and use it to wipe out the villagers. Once the bear had served its purpose, they would deal with it, all while avoiding direct conflict themselves. Back in his hiding place, Suhei overheard the snake catcher's conversation and couldn't help but ponder why they would choose to eliminate their own companions instead of focusing on the bear. He found the ruthlessness of the human heart deeply unsettling, but quickly dismissed the thought. His more pressing concern was the fact that the snake catchers were aware of his general location, with one even standing ominously close by. The danger to his life was growing by the second. As he weighed his options, Suhei's thoughts turned to the demon bear. The catchers planned to confront it after disposing of the villagers. Perhaps, he thought, if he could find a way to consume the bear's essence, it would provide him with the opportunity he desperately needed to break through to the third level of spiritual cultivation. In one fell swoop, he might gain the strength necessary to face the snake catchers head-on. However, as usual, doubt crept into his mind. The risk was enormous. What kind of fool would challenge a demon bear, much less in the presence of snake catchers? Striking the ground with frustration, Suhei recalled that the snake catchers had mentioned teaming up to defeat the bear, which meant they weren't in a hurry to kill him yet. But the notion of trying to consume the bear in front of them was absurd. It would be nothing short of a death wish. Meanwhile, one of the snake catchers, Manhua, was quietly scheming against his companions. He muttered to himself that the demon bear and the old black snake together would only be enough for one person to achieve a breakthrough, implying that he intended to eliminate his partner after they dealt with the demon bear. Hidden away, Suhei overheard this and began to wonder if there was a silver lining to the unfolding chaos. The internal conflict between the snake catchers might present him with an opportunity to turn the situation in his favor. He resolved to remain calm and observe, waiting for the perfect moment to act. Not long after, one of the other snake catchers returned, announcing that he had completed the preparations to lure out the demon bear. He confidently claimed that in less than 30 minutes, the beast would awaken. Almost immediately, a deafening roar echoed from deep within the cave, signaling the bear's awakening and its attack on the unsuspecting villagers. Panic ensued as the villagers scrambled, terrified and confused. They had been led to believe they were searching for a snake, not a bear. Desperate, they turned to the snake catchers for help. The snake catchers, however, stood on a high ledge, watching the chaos unfold with cold indifference. When the villagers pleaded for assistance, they responded with harsh glares, calling them useless and urging them to accept their fate. One catcher even sneered, telling them to simply perish. It dawned on the villagers then that they had been deliberately deceived, led into the bear's cave as part of a sinister plot to cut costs and eliminate them. One brave villager, enraged by the betrayal, drew his bow and fired an arrow at the snake catchers. The arrow struck one of their coin pouches, spilling gold coins and cultivation pills onto the ground. Suhei, nearby, caught the scent of the scattered pills, immediately recognizing them as golden pills. The rich, magical aroma filled his senses, and he couldn't resist. With a swift flick of his tail, he snatched one of the pills, drooling at the invigorating energy it radiated. Meanwhile, one of the snake catchers noticed his pouch had been torn open and asked his partner for help collecting the spilled contents. As the demon bear drew closer, the other catcher bent down to scoop up the scattered pills and coins, arrogantly claiming that anything he picked up now was rightfully his, due to his partner's negligence. All the while, the demon bear had finished off the remaining villagers, now holding the last one in its massive jaws. As the grim scene unfolded, Manhua began chanting under his breath, a sinister gleam in his eye. He turned to his partner and suggested that he, too, should join the fallen villagers. Without warning, Jean shoved his partner toward the advancing bear. The man stumbled forward, his eyes wide with shock as he landed dangerously close to the beast. The demon bear's eyes locked onto him, its fury apparent. In disbelief, The fallen snake catcher confronted Jean Manhua, demanding to know why he had been betrayed. Jean smirked, finally speaking aloud the truth he had held in for so long. "You should accept your fate," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I have waited for this moment for a long time." He then revealed that he had known all along about his partner's intention to eliminate him and claim the spirit beast for himself. "You thought you could deceive me, but I've always been one step ahead," Jean finished, his eyes gleaming with victory as the demon bear closed in on his former ally. Senior brother Ding, realizing his imminent demise, made a desperate plea, offering Jean Wenhua the spirit beast in exchange for his life. But Jean Wenhua, eyes cold and unwavering, declared that it was only Senior Ding's death he desired. As the demon bear lunged forward, Ding activated a powerful talisman and began chanting in a frantic voice. A massive explosion followed, engulfing the bear in roaring flames. Yet, even as the fire consumed its fur, the bear stood tall, its fury only intensifying. Senior brother Ding, however, was less fortunate. The blast from his own spell consumed him, leaving nothing but ashes in the wind. Jean Wenhua, seeing the demon bear emerge from the flames, even more enraged, quickly assessed the situation. The beast, though wounded, was now a far greater threat. Recognizing the heightened danger, Jean Wenhua made the prudent decision to retreat, unwilling to risk his life further. Meanwhile, Suhei had been watching everything from his hidden vantage point. The death of the snake catcher, coupled with the demon bear's grievous injuries, made him realize this was his pivotal opportunity. His heart raced as he weighed his options. With Senior Ding gone and Jean Wenhua fleeing, the demon bear was weakened, but still a formidable foe. Yet Suhei knew that if he could defeat the bear, it might propel him to the third level of spiritual cultivation in one swift leap. Without hesitation, Suhei swallowed the golden cultivation pill he had snatched earlier. A surge of immense energy coursed through him, his body pulsing with newfound strength. He transformed into his battle form, his golden scales gleaming with power, and his muscles rippling with anticipation. Thank you for watching. To confirm you viewed the entire video, leave a comment with the word dragon. We can't wait to see you in the next chapter. Take care. Just as he's about to engage, his eyes catch sight of two chi-replenishing pills lying in the snow. He pauses, hunger gnawing at his insides. Why am I so hungry, he wonders. The question lingers as he eyes the pills, contemplating their effect. He already consumed one earlier. Would taking these two make any difference? He decides to stash one pill behind his teeth, saving it for the right moment. He'll consume it when the need is greatest. Suddenly, a pack of wolves encircles him, their eyes gleaming with predatory hunger. Suhei narrows his eyes and speculates that the scent of blood has drawn them in. Rather than feeling threatened, he welcomes their presence. Fortunate timing, he mutters. The thought of feasting on villagers no longer tempts him. These wolves will suffice. Without hesitation, Suhei lunges forward, his fangs sinking into the first wolf's throat. He rips it apart with ease, then turns to the next, dispatching them one by one in a flurry of lethal strikes. The remaining wolves snarl and snap, trying to overwhelm him, but he feels nothing but the thrill of the hunt. His hunger pushes him to devour each wolf quickly, savoring their flesh. But no matter how many he consumes, the gnawing emptiness inside him remains. The last few wolves retreat toward the demon bear. The bear, though injured, notices the approaching wolves and swats them aside with its massive claws, killing them with ease. From a distance, Suhei watches the creature, marveling at its sheer strength despite its wounds. The earlier confrontation with the snake catchers had left the bear battered, but it still fights with the power of a beast at the peak of the third level of spiritual cultivation. Suhei knows that, by comparison, he's only at the peak of the second level. A sharp pang of hunger shoots through him again, and his eyes flicker red as he struggles to maintain control. I must not lose my composure, Suhei reminds himself, fighting to suppress the wild urge to consume. But the hunger, it's relentless, clawing at him, demanding more. His mind drifts to the demon statue cauldron, and a chilling realization forms. It's the cauldron that's driving this insatiable hunger, urging him to devour. It craves something more, something far greater than wolves. It craves the power of the demon bear. His thoughts race. The bear is stronger than him, but it's severely wounded. If he could harness the power of the bear's demonic core, it would elevate him beyond his current limitations. But could he risk it? His survival has always depended on caution, on knowing when to strike and when to flee. The demon bear shifts, its eyes suddenly locking onto Suhei. He freezes, wondering if the bear has finally run out of strength after fending off the wolves. For a tense moment, they stare each other down, the forest deathly silent. Suhei takes a slow breath, forcing himself to remain calm. The bear's gaze seems to burn with primal rage, but there's also a weariness there, a weakness that Suhei senses he might exploit. I can't keep running, Suhei tells himself, the resolve in his voice hardening. He knows the risks, but the hunger gnawing at his core is unbearable. If he doesn't act soon, he might not survive this night, not with the cauldron's desire pushing him toward madness. Gathering his thoughts, he forces himself to stay composed. If he's clever and cautious, there might be a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless, that he could overcome the demon bear. In a split second, Suhei lunges at the demon bear, both creatures driven by the primal urge to kill and devour one another. His instincts sharpen, and his golden tail lashes out, striking the bear's eyes with blinding precision. A guttural roar of agony escapes the bear's maw as it reels backward, releasing Suhei from its crushing grip. He staggers, his mind racing. This demon bear is leagues above the demon eel he once defeated in the river. Its strength is immense, but with its vision now taken, Suhei feels the scales tipping in his favor. As the bear thrashes blindly, Suhei realizes the chi-replenishing pills he consumed earlier are starting to lose their effect. The biting cold of the forest is beginning to sap his strength, his limbs trembling under the strain of the battle. He wastes no time, quickly swallowing the final pill he had hidden behind his teeth. Warmth spreads through his veins, and with his strength momentarily restored, he adopts a combat stance, intent on finishing what he started. He launches himself at the bear again, this time with deadly intent. His fangs sink deep into the bear's neck, and with a tremendous effort, he slams the massive creature to the ground. Blood gushes from the wound, but despite its blindness, the demon bear fights back with terrifying power. Suhei feels the sharp claws of the beast rake against his body, tearing through flesh and muscle. Pain surges through him, and he realizes with grim certainty that some of his bones might be fractured. But he refuses to release his grip. With every ounce of strength, he tightens his jaws around the bear's throat, his body screaming in protest as he attempts to snap its neck. The bear lets out a final, enraged bellow, but Suhei twists violently, and the sound of bone cracking fills the air. The bear's neck is broken, yet, with a final burst of strength, it hurls him off, sending him crashing into the snow. Suhei stumbles to his feet, panting heavily. The bear is still alive, but it's dying, its throat crushed, its life slowly ebbing away. Suhei knows it won't last much longer, but he's not about to take any chances. He glances around, considering his options. He briefly thinks about using rocks as he had with the demon boar, but doubts that would be effective against a beast of this size. His eyes land on a tree, and with a quick decision, he wraps his tail around its trunk, lifting it high before bringing it down with crushing force onto the bear's head. The demon bear's body goes still. Suhei watches, his breath coming in ragged gasps. For a moment, he remains motionless, unsure if the bear is truly dead. The silence of the forest seems to stretch endlessly. Finally, convinced that the bear is no longer a threat, he allows himself to relax slightly, though the pain in his body is nearly overwhelming. Suhei begins to channel what little energy he has left, focusing on healing his wounds. His body throbs with each pulse of energy, but he keeps one eye on the fallen bear, unwilling to let his guard down completely. Suddenly, a noise behind him shatters the stillness. He spins around to see the wolves returning, their eyes glinting with hunger and greed. Suhei's lips curl into a snarl. These scavengers dare to challenge him now? He bellows a warning, his voice reverberating through the trees. I killed the demon bear. You won't take it from me. But the wolves don't retreat. They circle him, emboldened by their numbers, and Suhei's patience snaps. His wounds are severe, and his chi is nearly depleted, but he has no choice. With a growl of frustration, he swallows his last chi-replenishing pill, feeling a surge of power flood through his aching body. He prepares to face the pack. 2 hours later, as the first rays of sunlight break through the trees, Suhei stands victorious. The snow around him is stained with blood, the corpses of the wolves lying in mangled heaps. His body is battered, his movements slow and labored, but the threat has been eliminated. Suhei limps toward the demon bear's carcass, his vision blurred with exhaustion. The chi from the pill is fading fast, and he knows that if he doesn't find a place to hide and recover, he won't survive much longer. The battle with the wolves has drained him further, and his injuries are severe. He glances warily at the sky, his mind racing with thoughts of the snake catchers. If they return now, in his weakened state, he's as good as dead. As Su-hei trudged forward, dragging the lifeless body of the demon bear behind him, the cold air seemed to grow heavier with each step. The battlefield was littered with the fallen bodies of villagers, their once vibrant lives now reduced to stillness. He paused, his gaze falling on one corpse in particular. It was the father of the young boy who had once shared his fish with Su-hei. Beside the man lay the two dogs from earlier, their bodies motionless and stiff, frozen in death. Su-hei approached them, nudging the dogs with his snout, urging them to rise and flee from the encroaching cold. But they did not move. The dogs, once so loyal and fierce, had stayed beside their master until the end. Their unwavering loyalty stirred something deep within him, something foreign and unsettling. He had always viewed the world through the lens of survival, where only the cunning and treacherous endure. Yet here were creatures who had given everything, not for power or gain, but out of devotion. His thoughts darkened as he resumed his journey, reflecting on the harsh reality of this world. How many lifetimes did humans endure, only to meet such tragic and senseless ends? He pushed the thoughts away, reminding himself that weakness led only to death. In this world, he needed to be ruthless if he were to survive and thrive. There could be no room for sentiment. Eventually, Su-hei discovered a cave hidden deep in the forest. A puddle of water near the entrance concealed it well, making it an ideal hiding spot. He dragged the demon bear's body inside, grateful for the cover it offered. His strength was waning, and the wounds from his battle were beginning to take their toll. But he had no time to rest. He needed to consume the demon bear's remains and cultivate before the snake catchers or other threats could find him. The demon bear's flesh was rich and potent, its taste exquisite as he tore into it. As he devoured the body, Su-hei could feel the demon statue cauldron inside his stomach coming to life, absorbing the bear's essence and fueling his evolution. His body began to hum with power, and a familiar sensation of transformation surged through him. He had felt this before, the moment of ascension, the leap toward greater strength. Golden spikes emerged along his tail, gleaming in the dim light of the cave. He could feel it. He had broken through to the third level of spiritual cultivation. Not only had he reached the pinnacle of this level, but his tail had also sprouted 10 golden scales, each one radiating with newfound power. Su-hei reveled in the achievement, his eyes glowing with satisfaction. Every risk he had taken, every peril he had faced, had been worth it. As he settled deeper into his thoughts, a vision danced in his mind. Himself, standing tall with a mighty staff in hand, just like the legendary great sage Sun Wukong. He imagined reigning over the mountain, the creatures of the forest bowing before him as their king. 3 months had passed since Su-hei's fateful confrontation with the demon bear. Winter had relinquished its hold on the mountain, and spring's warm breath had brought new life to the land. Su-hei stirred from his deep hibernation, his body now measuring a formidable 8 centimeters in length, with 11 golden scales gleaming along his tail. He marveled at the transformation he had undergone, not just in size but in power. His senses had sharpened over the long months of rest, his perceptual abilities now far surpassing what they once were. Utilizing his newfound X-ray vision, he detected 2 wild boars roaming nearby. A hunger stirred in him, but it was tempered by a new sense of awareness. He reflected on his growth, both physically and mentally, over the past 3 months. It was time to stretch his muscles and hunt for sustenance. The decision was instinctive yet thoughtful. Swiftly, he struck, dispatching the male boar with lethal precision. The encounter ended in mere moments, his strength and speed rendering the boar defenseless. As he turned his attention to the second wild boar, he noticed her trembling. She was female and pregnant. His instincts urged him to kill, yet something deeper held him back. Sparing her life, he decided to consume the male boar instead. He had learned to respect the balance of nature, realizing that not every creature was meant for slaughter. Some had to be preserved for the sake of the future. The female boar watched in terror as Su-hei dragged away her mate. Yet, Su-hei was not concerned with her fear. He had come to understand that, unable to return to the village, he would have to rely on the mountain for his survival. Self-sufficiency was key, but so too was understanding the ecosystem. By sparing the pregnant female, he was ensuring the continuation of her line. As he feasted on the male boar, his mind wandered to the wildlife that surrounded him. 20 roe deer, 30 musk deer, and hundreds of rabbits, along with monkeys, wild goats, coyotes, and more. The mountain was bountiful, and provided he was careful not to overhunt, he could live comfortably here, indulging in the richness of the land. But Suhei knew that relying solely on the mountain would not be enough for his cultivation. He needed more. His mind drifted back to his past experiences, to the battles that had forged his strength. It was clear to him now, opportunity and adventure were what he required to advance, to grow even stronger. His resolve strengthened. Suhei decided it was time to return home, if only for a short while. The scene shifted to Thousand Snake Valley, a lush and vibrant place where snakes basked leisurely in the sunlight. It was a place of beauty, and with the arrival of spring, life was renewed. This was mating season for the snakes, and the valley was filled with anticipation. Suhei observed the scene from a distance, his thoughts far from the peaceful valley. Despite the allure of companionship, he had little time to indulge in such desires. Still, a blush crept across his face as he recalled the little white snake who had often tried to flirt with him, wrapping herself around his body in an attempt to get his attention. She was persistent, but Suhei had always kept his distance. He reasoned that they came from different worlds. Her innocent advances clashed with the dangers that now surrounded him. A year ago, he might have welcomed such attention, but now he had bigger concerns. Since embarking on his cultivation journey, Suhei had lost interest in trivial desires like companionship. His focus was solely on training, on pushing the limits of his potential. As he gazed at the vibrant snake tree in the center of the valley, its branches heavy with the fruits that would soon ripen, he felt a wave of anticipation. These fruits, which matured every 3 years, held the key to advancing his cultivation. Suhei recalled how, 3 years ago, he had accidentally consumed a snake fruit, and in doing so, gained wisdom far beyond his years. This time, he planned to consume 3 fruits, believing that such a feast would propel him to the 4th stage of spiritual cultivation. If he could reach the middle stage, he would be able to utilize spells, moving beyond reliance on brute strength and physical attacks. The thought of such power tantalized him. But his moment of reflection was cut short by the sound of voices echoing from the entrance of the valley. They were discussing the snake fruit. His heart tightened. He recognized the voices. The snake catchers. They had returned. Among them was the voice of the young snake catcher, who had barely survived the mountain encounter 3 months ago. He was speaking to his companion, Senior Sister Song. Suhei listened intently, his heightened senses allowing him to pick up on every word. The young snake catcher expressed his regret over the death of their partner, Senior Brother Ding. Senior Sister Song reassured him, telling him that the past should be left behind. What mattered now was his survival. As the snake catchers discussed their next move, Suhei listened closely. Senior Sister Song asserted that they only required 2 of the snake tree's fruits. One of the other catchers warned her of the fierce beasts that guarded the valley, advising caution. But Senior Sister Song dismissed the concerns, her arrogance evident as she revealed that she had borrowed a powerful magical weapon from their master for this very occasion. She seemed unbothered, even confident, declaring that the only creature worth their attention was the old Snake King. If it revealed itself, they would kill it and use its gallbladder for medicinal purposes. Suhei's eyes narrowed. They were here for the fruit, and they had a weapon capable of confronting him. He weighed his options. He could flee, but if he did, the snake catchers would seize the ripened snake fruit. That was something he could not allow. His desire to advance his cultivation was far too great. Reflecting on his current state, Suhei knew he had reached the pinnacle of the 3rd stage of cultivation. He had fought and defeated stronger foes, beasts like the demon eel and demon bear, which had previously fended off the snake catchers. Perhaps these humans weren't as formidable as they seemed. However, as he remained hidden, Suhei sensed something unusual. The snake catchers unleashed a peculiar air attack. The odor in the air was faint but unmistakable poison. Instinctively, he covered his nose and leaped into the water, his golden scales gleaming briefly as he submerged himself. Beneath the surface, Suhei calmed his racing thoughts. He would observe, wait, and strike only when the time was right. As he hid, he hoped that the snake catchers' greed and treachery might cause them to turn on each other, just as they had on the snowy mountain months before. The snake catchers' attack had nearly wiped out the entire snake population in the valley. As the few remaining serpents slithered away in panic, one of the male snake catchers turned to Senior Sister Song, his voice dripping with uncertainty. He asked what they would do if the old Snake King failed to appear. She replied with an air of indifference, explaining that if the old Snake King didn't show, they would simply take the snake fruit. But she was confident he would come. After all, the old Snake King had lived for over a decade, clinging to life by relying on the fruit to prolong his years. Nearby, concealed within the shadows, Suhei listened intently, a surge of anger bubbling within him. Old Snake King? Were they talking about him? His tail flicked with annoyance. These fools had no idea who they were dealing with. How dare they claim he was near death? Suhei retorted silently, seething. It was not he who was nearing the end, it was they. Every day, he grew stronger, his cultivation pushing him further toward immortality. These snake catchers were the ones whose time was running out. Their ignorance infuriated him, especially their insistence on calling him the Old Snake King. He recalled how the villagers had often referred to him as Old Black Snake, an insulting nickname he had never bothered to correct. But now, hearing these catchers use a similar title, he began to question its origin. Why did everyone seem to think he was old? Senior Sister Song, meanwhile, stood in front of the magnificent snake tree, admiring its beauty. Her eyes gleamed with greed as she drew closer to the fruit-laden branches. Suhei shook off his irritation. Focus, he told himself. He couldn't afford to get distracted. The snake catchers were here for the snake fruit, and if they succeeded in taking it, his path to cultivation would be delayed. He watched, tense and ready to strike. Just as the snake catchers prepared to harvest the fruit, Senior Sister Song paused abruptly, her gaze sharp. Wait, she murmured. Suhei's heart skipped a beat. Had she sensed him? He braced himself, ready for a fight, when suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the valley. The ground shook as chunks of the valley wall began to crumble. From above, a massive shadow lunged toward the snake catchers. Suhei's eyes widened as a colossal black snake descended with terrifying speed, its attack narrowly missing Senior Sister Song, who evaded it by a hair's breadth. That's the old black snake, she shouted, her voice tinged with surprise, but steady. Suhei blinked in disbelief, his mind reeling. This wasn't him. This was the true old black snake, the one they had been talking about. The real Old Snake King. For a moment, Suhei felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. So, I'm not the Old Snake King after all? He realized then that this other serpent had been the source of all the trouble he had been blamed for. Its reputation had stained his own, making him out to be a monster when, in truth, he had kept to himself for most of his life, rarely leaving the valley until 3 years ago. He had inadvertently taken the blame for the old black snake's vicious deeds. As the two forces clashed, the air crackled with tension. The old black snake lunged at Senior Sister Song, its jaws wide, intent on devouring her. But Senior Sister Song was quick to react. With a wave of her hand, she cast a powerful spell, Swamp Spell. Thick, muddy water erupted from the ground, wrapping around the old black snake's mouth, silencing its roar and halting its advance. The force of the spell rippled through the valley, even reaching Suhei's hiding spot. Despite the spell's strength, Suhei could see that the old black snake was a formidable foe. Even in its advanced age, it fought with remarkable power, breaking through the swamp spell with sheer will. Mud splattered everywhere as the old black snake thrashed, its massive body coiling and uncoiling with terrifying energy. Suhei watched in awe. The snake catchers were dangerous, yes, but this old black snake was no easy prey. Even with age against it, the serpent still had the strength to challenge these intruders. Senior Sister Song, with a fierce glint in her eye, reached for her magical weapon, the spiritual bell. As she charged at the old black snake, the bell let out an ear-splitting chime, its power resonating through the valley. The old black snake writhed in agony, its massive body twisting as if the very sound itself pierced through its scales. Suhei, still hidden, winced at the noise. The surrounding cacophony felt like a dagger plunging into his skull, and for a moment, he thought his head might split open from the sheer intensity of it. Seizing the old black snake's moment of vulnerability, Senior Sister Song unleashed another attack. But this time, the strike merely glanced off the snake's back, ricocheting harmlessly off its tough, impenetrable scales. She paused, frustration flickering across her face. Its scales are incredibly tough, she thought, her eyes narrowing with realization. An idea bloomed in her mind. If they could kill this ancient serpent, its scales would make formidable armor. The temptation of such a prize gleamed in her thoughts, but her focus quickly returned to the task at hand. The male snake catcher, seeing her struggle, rushed to her side. "We can't take it down alone," he called out, urging her to join forces. She nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. Together, they launched a coordinated assault, their attacks synchronized in a deadly dance. Slowly, they began to wear the old black snake down, its once dominating presence now starting to falter under the relentless barrage. From his vantage point, Suhei watched the battle unfold, his thoughts racing. He couldn't deny that Senior Sister Song was much more powerful than the snake catchers he had faced before. Her mastery of the spiritual bell and her sheer magical prowess made her a formidable opponent. As the old black snake showed signs of weakening, Suhei's tail twitched with uncertainty. Should he intervene? He felt an instinctual pull to assist the old black snake. They were both snake beasts, after all, but something held him back. The snake fruit isn't ripe yet, he reminded himself, his eyes flicking toward the fruit hanging on the tree. If I act now, I might waste this opportunity. He clenched his jaw in frustration, knowing that it would be foolish to rush in too soon. But he couldn't just stand idly by. The old black snake, despite its age and reputation, was still one of his kind. After a brief moment of deliberation, Suhei decided to offer covert assistance. Using his tail, he picked up a rock, preparing to strike when the time was right. But just as he was about to act, he caught sight of something that sent a surge of anger coursing through him. Near the snake fruit tree, a figure was moving. A man had crept toward the tree while the snake catchers were preoccupied with the battle, and now he stood before the sacred snake fruit, attempting to uproot the tree itself. The man's greedy hands clawed at the roots as he muttered to himself, declaring that the tree and its precious fruit would be his. Suhei's eyes burned with fury. How dare he? His body coiled with rage as his tail lashed the ground. Anyone who threatened the very roots of the snake fruit tree was committing an unforgivable crime. Without a second thought, Suhei launched himself at the intruder, his intent clear. He would devour the man whole. There was no mercy for those who dared to threaten the lifeblood of the valley. Thank you for watching. To confirm you viewed the entire video, leave a comment with the word dragon. We can't wait to see you in the next chapter. Take care. The man, noticing the snake approaching, resolves to uproot the snake tree in a desperate attempt to escape. However, Snakey, advocating for reason, questions the man's intent to dig up the roots and cause such destruction. In a sudden turn of events, Snakey swallows both the man and the upper portion of the snake tree, initially unaware of the act. Moments later, discomfort arises within Snakey's stomach as the leaves from the tree are digested, leading to a sensation of impending explosion. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Snakey quickly regurgitates the man. He then begins chanting the heaven and earth incantation, attempting to summon the demon god cauldron to digest the man. However, when using its divine sense, Snakey discovers that the cauldron is already full, signaling that he has reached the peak of the third level of spiritual cultivation. Relieved to find that the leaves from the snake tree aren't poisonous, but simply too potent, Snakey contemplates whether the surge of berserk power he felt was caused by consuming too many leaves. Although the leaves were digested immediately, there was a noticeable delay in cultivating their energy. With this in mind, Snakey grabs the snake tree and begins to swim away, determined to escape before the fruits fall into the hands of the snake catchers. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the old black snake, severed in two. One of the snake catchers sits atop its body, praising Senior Sister Song for defeating the creature in just 30 minutes. In response, Senior Sister Song, addressing him as Junior Brother Xiao, downplays her performance and suggests they move on to harvest the snake tree's fruits. To their surprise, they discover the tree has vanished. Suspicion fills the air as they exchange glances. Senior Sister Song quietly wonders if Junior Brother Xiao might be the thief. In response, Junior Brother Xiao sharply retorts that if she wanted the snake tree's fruit for herself, she could have simply asked instead of resorting to theft behind his back. As the tension builds, both Senior Sister Song and Junior Brother Xiao begin accusing each other of stealing the snake tree. Senior Sister Song sharply questions Junior Brother Xiao about his insinuations, demanding to know why he believes she's the culprit. Junior Brother Xiao, not backing down, claims she's the real thief and demands she reveal her accomplice. He promises not to inform the master once they return to the sect, as long as she confesses. Unmoved, Senior Sister Song denies having any accomplice, countering that if Junior Brother Xiao didn't take the tree, then someone else must have. Meanwhile, Snakey watches the unfolding drama from a distance, using his X-ray vision to observe. He finds the situation amusing, silently urging them to turn against one another. Suddenly, junior brother Xiao produces a jade teleportation token, declaring that since senior sister Song refuses to admit the truth, he will summon the sect master to settle the matter. Just as he is about to activate the token, a hand seizes his wrist, stopping him cold. "That's enough," a voice commands. Junior brother Xiao looks up and recognizes the individual as eldest senior brother. The eldest senior brother calmly explains that the master had already been aware of their actions and had secretly dispatched him to monitor them. He had arrived moments earlier and witnessed their argument. Junior brother Xiao quickly informs him that the snake tree has been stolen and questions if eldest senior brother had a hand in it. The eldest senior brother shakes his head, clarifying that he was not responsible, but he does remark that the thief was quite clever. The culprit used an ordinary person to dig up the tree, allowing them to evade detection through spiritual energy. With a stern expression, eldest senior brother places his hand on the ground, declaring he will track their footprints. However, it quickly becomes clear that the tracks have mysteriously vanished. Baffled, junior brother Xiao asks what they should do next, now that the snake tree thief has fled. Eldest senior brother, unfazed, responds with certainty. "As long as the man who took it remains alive, I will find him. He won't be able to hide for long." A faint trace of spiritual energy began to manifest, revealing the path the thief had taken. Eldest senior brother, having reached the 6th level of cultivation, knew he could easily apprehend the snake tree thief. Hearing this, Snakey was alarmed, realizing that eldest senior brother was far beyond his own abilities and could eliminate him at any moment. Panicked, Snakey decided to burrow underground, reasoning that by shutting off his divine consciousness, even a cultivator at the peak of true cultivation might struggle to find him. As he tunneled deeper, he suddenly sensed something strange. Turning to investigate, he realized that the snake fruit was ripening, its potent aroma spreading across the valley. Eldest senior brother, too, recognized the fragrance, instantly noting that it was coming from underground. Without hesitation, eldest senior brother used the earth travel technique, a well-known spell among mid-stage cultivators, part of the 5 elements technique, commonly called the earth escape spell. As he navigated below the surface, Snakey, in a desperate move, hastily devoured the snake fruit, chanting furiously to activate the demon god cauldron and urging it to refine the fruit quickly. Moments later, eldest senior brother arrived, impressed by the thief's speed and skill with earth travel. He remarked on the impressive technique, but confidently declared that it would all be in vain. The treasure left by his ancestors made it impossible for the thief to escape unless they were a foundation establishment cultivator. With a grim determination, he vowed to hunt down every last one of them. Surging through the ground, his spiritual energy flared as he raged at the audacity of the thief who dared steal from the snake catchers. "They will face dire consequences today," he declared. Snakey, now feeling the overwhelming pressure of eldest senior brother pursuing him underground, was gripped by fear. Desperately, he urged the demon god cauldron to stop its sluggish pace and refine the snake fruit faster. If it didn't, they would surely be caught. Sensing the urgency, the demon god cauldron finally accelerated the refinement process. As the refinement sped up, Snakey couldn't help but wonder if the demon god cauldron actually understood his words. Suddenly, golden spiritual energy surged through Snakey's entire being, causing his venomous fangs to elongate, his muscles to swell, and new golden scales to form. He marveled at the sensation, feeling as though a new, more powerful version of himself was about to emerge. Just as this transformation unfolded, eldest senior brother arrived and observed Snakey, now achieving the 4th level of spiritual cultivation. To his surprise, eldest senior brother realized that the target he had been chasing wasn't just an ordinary thief. It was a snake. What's more, Snakey had advanced to the middle stage of spiritual cultivation without engaging in direct combat, instead focusing on seizing the snake tree and fleeing. This indicated a level of intelligence far beyond that of typical demons at this stage. Eldest senior brother quickly concluded that killing Snakey would be a mistake. Instead, he decided that capturing the snake and bringing it back to the snake cultivation sect for study would be a major triumph. Meanwhile, Snakey reflected on his recent breakthrough to the 4th level of cultivation. His golden scales felt stronger and more agile, a clear indication of his newfound power. But his thoughts were interrupted as eldest senior brother lunged at him, wielding a whip formed from spiritual energy. Snakey's eyes widened as he observed the approaching weapon, wondering if this man possessed advanced spellcasting abilities. He quickly noted the presence of a treasure embedded within the weapon, a spiritual rope-like whip. Recognizing the danger, Snakey knew that being captured by this weapon would spell his doom. Determined to defend himself, he braced for the attack, hoping his newly strengthened golden scales could deflect it. However, to his horror, the spiritual rope slipped effortlessly past his defenses. The golden scales, though powerful, could not block or evade the whip strike. In that moment, Snakey realized with a sinking feeling that he could neither destroy nor escape this attack.
In this intense confrontation, Snakey, armed with his golden scales, attempts to deflect an attack from the snake catcher, confident that his defense is impenetrable. But to his shock, the snake catcher's strike pierces through, hitting him directly. The snake catcher reveals that his weapon is an upper-grade spiritual treasure, making Snakey, only at mid-stage cultivation, powerless to block it. This treasure is strong enough to even subdue late-stage demonic beasts without resistance. Realizing this, Snakey quickly assesses the situation. Spiritual treasures are governed by divine consciousness, so Snakey summons his own divine power as the demon god cauldron materializes. He boldly declares that he will destroy the snake catcher's divine consciousness. Yet, despite his efforts, the snake catcher's attack counters his divine power, leaving Snakey doubting his own strategy. Meanwhile, the snake catcher smugly believes his divine consciousness, now fused with his beast-taming technique, is indestructible. He claims it could only be destroyed by a cultivator in the Foundation Establishment realm, a realm Snakey hasn't reached. Undeterred, Snakey comes up with a new, wild plan. If he can't eliminate the attack with his divine consciousness, then he'll consume it, literally. Using brute force, Snakey traps the snake catcher's spiritual treasure inside his stomach. The treasure writhes, struggling to escape, but Snakey's thick skin holds it captive. Snakey realizes that controlling such a powerful treasure drains the snake catcher's true chi. So if he can keep the treasure confined, he'll eventually exhaust his enemy. Panicked, the snake catcher calls out desperately for his spiritual treasure to break free. But Snakey, determined to tire him out, flees, dragging the encounter on. An hour later, the chase continues, with the snake catcher relentlessly pursuing him, using his earth-traversing technique to increase his speed. However, the confined terrain is working against him. His true chi is rapidly depleting, and he knows he needs to end this fight soon. The snake catcher yells at Snakey to return his treasure, but Snakey ignores him, still evading as he observes that the spiritual treasure inside him is beginning to stabilize. Snakey realizes the snake catcher is running low on true chi, and now is the time to strike back. Understanding that he can't keep running forever, Snakey devises a final plan. For a demonic beast like him, close combat is the key to victory. Noting that the snake catcher has kept a safe distance of 10 meters during their fight, Snakey decides to slow his pace, luring him closer. The snake catcher, seeing Snakey slow down, assumes he's reaching his limit. He starts threatening Snakey, vowing to slice open his stomach and reclaim his beast-taming ring. As the battle intensifies, the snake catcher launches a flurry of attacks, calling them celestial wind blades. Each strike aims to overwhelm Snakey, but with precise movements, Snakey uses his golden scales to deflect the powerful blows. Spotting an opportunity, Snakey prepares to counterattack. The snake catcher, puzzled, wonders why his celestial wind blades, capable of killing any mid-level beast, couldn't even scratch Snakey. Realizing his current weapon won't do, the snake catcher decides to switch tactics. Drawing his snake-slaying sword, he unleashes its terrifying power. A massive phantom snake spirit appears behind him, and the snake catcher warns Snakey, telling him not to take it personally if he becomes ruthless. This sword has claimed the lives of countless serpents and demands a blood offering once unsheathed. But Snakey is unfazed. He charges forward, and the two clash once more. The snake catcher strikes fiercely, but Snakey's golden scales absorb the hits with ease. Shocked, the snake catcher quickly realizes his sword isn't powerful enough to pierce Snakey's formidable defense. With a swift counter, Snakey sends the snake catcher sprawling, confidently stating that the snake-slaying sword won't be enough to break through his defenses. Slightly injured from the impact, the snake catcher is stunned when he notices his sword has been damaged. Even as he channels his true chi to heal his wounds, he can't stop the growing realization. This might not be an ordinary snake. Could it be a dragon hatchling? Panic sets in as the snake catcher considers his next move. They are deep underground in Snake Valley, and he knows he has to escape to report this to his sect leader. However, his true spiritual chi is nearly depleted, rendering him unable to use his earth-traversing technique. Just as he begins to lose hope, he spots an opening above. Feeling as if the heavens are on his side, he activates his wind-riding skill and dashes for freedom, intent on warning his sect about the dragon hatchling. But Snakey is already ahead of him. The snake catcher finds himself ensnared by snake skin. He suddenly recalls seeing Snakey shedding earlier during its breakthrough. Snakey had planned this all along. As Snakey closes in, he swiftly tears off one of the snake catcher's hands. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Senior Sister Song and the other snake catchers. They hear their elder brother's screams and are in shock. One of the junior members questions whether a simple snake beast could truly challenge their elder brother, who's known for his strength. Before they can draw any conclusions, a massive explosion erupts nearby. Their elder brother emerges, battered and panicked, urging them to flee, warning that there's a dragon hatchling nearby. Senior Sister Song is skeptical. Could this really be a dragon hatchling? If so, it must be in the nascent soul realm to overpower their elder brother like this. The younger snake catcher insists they all flee in a different direction from their elder brother, sensing that his condition is dire. Back underground, Snakey is hot on the snake catcher's trail, chasing him through the opening created by the explosion. Reflecting on his momentary lapse in caution, Snakey knows he cannot let the snake catchers escape, or they'll cause him trouble later. The snake catcher, convinced he's finally reached freedom, assumes Snakey is still far below. But as he passes by the seemingly dead old black snake, whose body had been severed earlier, the black snake suddenly strikes. Venomous poison hits the snake catcher squarely, sending him tumbling in agony. He can't believe the old black snake is still capable of releasing poison despite being decapitated. Desperate, he reaches for an antidote, but Snakey is already closing in. Panicked, the snake catcher pulls out his last resort, an upper-grade spiritual jade. He didn't want to use it, but now he has no choice. Upon activation, the jade greatly enhances his speed, and he rockets forward at an astonishing pace. But Snakey remains unfazed. He pulls off one of his own golden scales, his only option left, and hurls it with deadly precision. The scale flies through the air, catching up to the snake catcher and piercing him straight through the heart. Before the snake catcher can even react, Snakey's scales fly out like sharp projectiles, one hitting him right in the face and another absolutely shattering his left arm. But here's the kicker. Even though Snakey's attack worked, it hurt him too. Losing his precious scales is no joke. Still, he pushes forward, ignoring the pain and approaching his enemy's lifeless body with caution. He isn't sure if this guy is playing dead or actually down for the count, so he keeps his distance. Then, suddenly, he lunges in and starts smashing the snake catcher's body with his iron tail. He isn't taking any chances. He pounds that body until he's 100% sure the thread is gone for good. Yet, despite the victory, Snakey can't help but feel a pang of regret about losing his scales. Wondering if they'll ever grow back, he decides to devour the corpse along with his lost scales. Maybe, just maybe, it'll help him recover. After his little feast, he notices a pouch, a storage bag that belonged to the snake catcher. Snakey's eyes light up. Ah, treasures, he thinks, tucking it away safely. But before he could properly celebrate his loot, he realizes the bag has a consciousness mark, a kind of branding only the snake catcher could access. No problem, though. Snakey erases it and claims the bag as his own. Out of nowhere, Snakey hears a voice calling to him, telling him to live well. He whips around, only to see the vision of the old Snake King blessing him. This vision jolts Snakey's memory, bringing him back to a time before he had become intelligent, a time when life was simpler and instincts ruled. 3 years back, Snakey recalls the fabled snake fruits had ripened. These fruits were special, the kind that could boost a snake's strength and maybe even bring out some latent powers. He remembers how 2 large fruits hung from the tree, ripe and ready to be devoured. But, of course, every snake in the valley had caught the scent and was swarming in for a taste. Chaos broke out, snakes fighting tooth and nail, when suddenly, a deafening roar silenced them all. The old Snake King himself had arrived, his presence so powerful that all the snakes froze and bowed down, including our Snakey. The Snake King had spared one of the fruits just for him, a rare and uncharacteristic kindness in the brutal world of snakes, where survival often means killing your own. That single fruit changed Snakey's life, transforming him into the spiritual being he is today. Remembering the old Snake King's gentle gaze, something Snakey could never understand, as snakes were supposed to be selfish and ruthless, he's filled with sorrow. Kneeling before the Snake King's remains, Snakey swears he'll avenge him. vowing to make the snake catchers pay for every ounce of suffering they've caused. After burying the Snake King's remnants, Snakey takes a step further, attempting to imitate human traditions by erecting a monument in the king's honor. He wishes his fallen king could reincarnate as a human in his next life, someone free from the struggles of snakekind. It's a heavy moment, but Snakey feels a strange sense of purpose. He realizes that true strength doesn't come from power alone. It comes from passing on wisdom and looking after the future generations. One day, if he's strong enough, he'll make sure this legacy lives on. But that's a vision for the future. For now, he has to focus on his own survival, as the snake catchers have already discovered his valley. As Snakey slithers away from the valley, he stumbles upon a woman lying on the ground, barely alive and covered in snake bites. He recognizes her as one of the cultists who had escaped earlier, and he's torn. Part of him thinks about devouring her to speed up the recovery of his scales, but he hesitates. Her being here doesn't make sense. Was it a trap? Were there hidden restrictions around her? Snakey decides not to act too rashly, remembering the junior snake catcher, a devious young man who once betrayed his own senior to rise through the ranks. Could he be behind this whole setup? As Snakey ponders, one of the large valley snakes suddenly lunges, swallowing half of the woman's body. Caught off guard, Snakey rushes to stop it, but arrives just as the big snake's head is severed by an invisible force. It's then Snakey realizes his suspicions might be correct. This was indeed a trap, all part of the junior snake catcher's sinister plan. This guy's truly terrifying, Snakey thinks, and he's left wondering what twisted schemes the cultist has in store. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the junior snake catcher himself, kneeling in prayer near a tomb. He hears a distant explosion and assumes that the woman is dead. With a grim determination, he swears vengeance on his family's behalf, vowing to put an end to all of Chun Daoling's disciples. His vendetta is personal, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to bring down the disciples one by one. Back in the valley, voices echo as the snake catcher's comrades discover the carnage. They find that their senior brother is missing, and their senior sister has died, but they manage to save the junior snake catcher just in time. They quickly administer a detoxification pill, hoping he'll recover within a few months. The news reaches their master, Chun Daoling, who is furious, vowing to hunt down the beast responsible and offer its skin as a sacrifice. Away from all this, Snakey returns to his lair in the Iron Bear Mountain Cave. He feels safer here, tucked away from the snake catchers who remain busy in the valley. He carefully places the snake tree he brought along, hoping it'll survive in its new home. Then he starts rifling through the snake catcher's belongings, discovering a stash of pills and potions. Not bad, he thinks. These supplies should help him grow stronger and, hopefully, regrow his golden scales. One item catches his eye, a book titled Thousand Snake Collection. Intrigued, Snakey starts reading and learns a wealth of knowledge about his species, the black-een snakes. He stumbles upon some unsettling truths. Humans hunt and decapitate his kind to create powerful pills, and even the strongest of his species, those capable of breathing fire, are no match for a well-placed sword. The reality hits hard. To survive, he'll need to grow even stronger and maybe even learn a few spells along the way. He picks up a jade slip, a complex but fascinating artifact containing spells like fireball, water explosion, and earth motion. With his intelligence, Snakey believes he can learn these spells, and for the next month, he immerses himself in training. By the end, he's made impressive progress. His earth motion technique allows him to dive into the ground and move faster than any human, and his scales have started to regrow, especially on his tail. With this newfound speed and strength, ordinary snake catchers won't stand a chance against him. Feeling hungry after all that training, Snakey spots a bird, fires off a quick fireball, and roasts it to perfection. As he enjoys his meal, he notices wolf tracks nearby. Just as he's processing this, a massive gray wolf, the Wolf King, appears. This isn't an ordinary wolf. It's a beast that can wield magic, a serious threat. But Snakey, no longer the same naive snake he once was, is ready. He's learned a special technique from his studies, a beast entrapment technique, which he now prepares to unleash on his new opponent. As Snakey takes charge and decides it's time to establish some serious order on his mountain turf. He's got big plans and knows he needs someone to help patrol and keep the place in check. And who better to take on that role than the mighty Wolf King? But as expected, the Wolf King isn't about to roll over and submit. He howls out a fierce challenge, making it clear he won't bow down easily. Not one to waste time, Snakey whips out his beast-taming ring, casting it over the Wolf King and ensnaring him. The wolf struggles, refusing to surrender to Snaky's command, but it doesn't take long before the ring's power starts to wear him down. After a fierce internal battle, the Wolf King finally submits, turning from a proud predator into Snaky's loyal underling. Now, this once mighty wolf follows Snaky's every command, even sitting up and playing dead on cue, much to Snaky's amusement. With his new subordinate secured, Snaky decides it's time for a mountain patrol. He hops on the Wolf King's back, setting out to survey his domain. As they move through the mountain, Snaky takes a mental inventory of the wildlife. The boar population has boomed, while deer and water deer have also increased in number. Goats, however, seem to be holding steady, probably thanks to the wolves keeping them in check. Rabbits, though, have multiplied like crazy. The mountain is thriving, and Snaky can't help but feel a sense of pride in his little ecosystem experiment. But just then, Snaky picks up a familiar scent. It's the white snake from Myriad Snake Valley, the one who seems to have a bit of a crush on him. Upon closer inspection, Snaky realizes she's another black snake like himself, though with a rare white color mutation. She hasn't reached the level of intelligence Snaky has. She's still just following basic instincts. Judging by her size, Snaky figures she must be younger, maybe even a bit of a junior in the snake world. He decides to give her a name, Snowy. Snowy seems totally infatuated with Snaky, and he, in turn, decides to look after her, like a big brother looking out for his little sister. However, the Wolf King, maybe feeling a bit territorial, growls to scare her away. Snaky finds this hilarious and tells him to cut it out, suggesting he try smiling instead. But when the Wolf King attempts a smile, it comes out looking more like a terrifying snarl. So Snaky quickly shuts down that idea. Deciding it's time to remove the taming ring from the Wolf King, Snaky sets some strict conditions. The wolf is now free, but has a few important duties to fulfill. He must hunt and deliver prey daily, patrol the mountain, and alert Snaky at the first sign of any human activity within a 10-kilometer radius. Any failure to meet these expectations means instant death. Understanding his role, the grateful Wolf King licks Snaky in a rare show of submission, fully committing to his new responsibilities. Back in his cave on Iron Bear Mountain, Snaky introduces Snowy to her new home. He shows her the cave and explains that it's where she'll start her cultivation journey. He instructs her to stay inside and cultivate next to the snake fruit tree, assuring her that she'll never have to worry about food with him around. Snowy, overjoyed to be by Snaky's side, eagerly agrees, thrilled to follow his every word. Meanwhile, back at the Myriad Snake Valley, the snake catcher sect master, Chen Daoling, is up to something big. Along with his disciple, he's using a powerful compass-like tool to track Snaky. They've gotten some fragmented information from Zhao, the disciple who survived the Snake Valley encounter, but even Zhao only has a vague memory of the beast he encountered. At one point, Zhao had even referred to Snaky as a dragon hatchling, but Chen Daoling dismissed the idea, scoffing that if it had truly been a dragon, none of them would have survived. He suspects it's simply an awakened demon snake, or maybe a snake possessed by a cultivator. With the help of the treasure compass, Chen Daoling is determined to track down Snaky. He instructs his disciple to search the mountain from the opposite side, reminding him to alert him immediately if he encounters the demon snake. His disciple nods, ready to follow his master's orders. After a while, the disciple reaches the right spot and senses the aura of a demon snake nearby. The scent he picks up isn't exactly what he expected. It's mixed with the scent of wolves. Soon enough, he finds himself surrounded by a pack of wolves led by the Wolf King himself, who's patrolling under Snaky's orders. The disciple is momentarily thrown off, wondering what a wolf pack is doing carrying a snake scent. He reasons that these wolves must have had some kind of run-in with the demon snake. But before he can think much more, the Wolf King charges at him. Undeterred, the disciple readies himself, thinking this idiot wolf is just looking for trouble. He launches a Thunder Seal attack, shocking the wolves and scaring the Wolf King into retreating. The Wolf King, now realizing just how powerful this human is, decides he needs to report this immediately to Snaky. The Wolf King races back, but soon finds himself cornered at the edge of a cliff, with the snake catcher closing in fast. In a desperate move, he jumps off the cliff just as another thunder strike hits, scorching his tail and burning off his fur. The Wolf King's painful howl echoes through the mountain, reaching Snaky's ears back in the cave. Instantly, Snaky realizes the snake catchers have arrived. He quickly orders Snowy to stay put, telling her to guard the snake fruit tree at all costs and not to leave the cave under any circumstance. Determined to protect his territory, Snakey decides to get as far away from the cave as possible, hoping to lead the intruders away. He makes his way to a nearby cliff and expands his divine consciousness, trying to gauge the strength of these newcomers. It doesn't take long before he picks up the presence of another powerful divine consciousness, the Disciple, who quickly locates Snakey. The Disciple, recalling his master's instructions, refrains from attacking immediately. He was told to hold off for half an hour until Chen Dowling arrives to deal with the snake personally. But despite his caution, the Disciple can't resist taunting. He shouts out to Snakey, acting as if he's powerful enough to defeat him on his own. He boasts about his level of cultivation, saying there's no need for his master's involvement when he, a 6th-level chi refiner, can handle it. Snakey, watching from a distance, recognizes the tactic. This guy is just trying to stall, waiting for backup. But Snakey isn't falling for it. Instead, he takes off at full speed, testing if the Disciple will follow. Predictably, the snake catcher launches an attack, sending a thunder seal explosion in Snakey's direction. But Snakey's already a step ahead, and the thunder attack misses, striking the ground instead. Growing frustrated, the Disciple amps up his pursuit, using his earth traversal technique to chase Snakey. He's furious, calling out that he won't let Snakey escape, especially not after the death of his brother. Despite his bravado, he's growing weaker with each passing moment, burning through his strength to keep up with Snakey. Then, suddenly, Snakey reverses course and speeds back toward the snake catcher. Caught completely off guard, the Disciple is shocked by the unexpected maneuver. At the speed they're both moving, there's no time to dodge, and it looks like they're heading straight for a collision. The snake catcher had been closing in fast, and as Snakey charged forward, he braced himself for the impact. But this guy was seriously irritated, thinking, how dare this snake challenge me? In a fit of rage, he unleashed a thunderbolt attack, aiming to turn Snakey into ash right there. But Snakey wasn't fazed. He had the golden shield talisman on him, a handy little item that blocked the thunderbolt with ease. To the snake catcher, though, it looked like Snakey had tanked that hit with pure resilience, which only fueled his fury. As Snakey drew even closer, the snake catcher noticed something that made his stomach drop. A familiar pouch tied to Snakey's side. It was his big brother's. That realization hit him hard, and a sense of dread crept in. But Snakey wasn't done. He activated an explosive talisman, one commonly used by the snake catchers themselves. The ground shattered as the explosion erupted, sending the snake catcher flying. He managed to survive, thanks to his quick reflexes and by using his own thunderbolt as a shield. But before he could even catch his breath, Snakey hit him again, this time with a black fireball that looked more like a nightmare than a spell. Panic took over as the snake catcher fumbled for his jade pendant, known as the Life Jade, hoping its shield would save him. But Snakey's black flame was faster, scorching him with brutal intensity and leaving him half-burned and on the brink of death. The black flame wasn't your average fireball either. It was a power Snakey could unleash thanks to a rare fire elemental herb and earth fire vine he had discovered, transforming his regular fireball into something much deadlier. The explosion from that black flame spread so widely that it gave away Snakey's position, but he didn't mind. As the snake catcher lay there, half of him scorched in agony, Snakey seized his storage bag and prepared for a final strike. Realizing his life was slipping away, the snake catcher called out for his master, Chen Dowling. And it turns out, Chen Dowling was already on his way, rushing in to save his wounded disciple. He shouted for the disciple to hold on, urging him to survive just a little longer. Seeing Chen Dowling closing in, Snakey knew it was time to bail. The old man was bad news. His power was on another level. Without missing a beat, Chen Dowling cast powerful healing spells and tossed a bottle of golden essence pills to his disciple, instructing him to recover while he pursued Snakey. Chen Dowling was furious, blaming himself for allowing his disciple to get hurt and even lose an arm. The rage inside him simmered, and he swore he'd kill Snakey and offer his corpse as a sacrifice to the gods. Snakey sensed Chen Dowling's presence approaching like an unstoppable force. He felt Chen Dowling's divine consciousness closing in on him, and it was terrifying. This guy was likely a perfected chi refinement master, a level Snakey knew he couldn't handle in direct combat. Chen Dowling shouted after him, trying to intimidate him into surrendering. But Snakey wasn't about to be tricked by fake mercy. With no hesitation, he activated his earth traversal technique, diving underground and escaping at full speed. He knew there was no way he could win this fight head-on. Chen Dowling's divine consciousness tracked him from above, and he watched, intrigued by Snaky's clever moves. This wasn't just an ordinary snake. It had mastered the rare earth traversal technique, a feat impressive enough to make Chen Daoling grudgingly admire Snaky's intelligence. But Chen Daoling wasn't slowing down, determined to chase him down to the end. As Snaky tunneled through the earth, something strange happened. He slammed into a rock beneath the surface, crying out in pain. Confused, Snaky realized his earth traversal wasn't letting him phase through the rock as usual. Panic started to creep in. If he tried to break through it with his tail, it would slow him down, and Chen Daoling was already breathing down his neck. Behind him, Chen Daoling shouted, "Stop right there! You won't escape today!" With no other choice, Snaky burst upward, emerging from the ground near a cliff. Quickly, he scanned his surroundings, wondering if he could use the landscape to his advantage. But before he could come up with a plan, Chen Daoling himself surfaced, sneering as he caught sight of Snaky. He practically taunted him with his expression, as if saying, "You really think you can escape me?" Thinking fast, Snaky struck the cliff with all his might, dislodging massive rocks and sending them hurtling toward Chen Daoling. To his surprise, Chen Daoling managed to shield himself with a martial arts technique called Golden Body Protection, deflecting the rocks easily. Seeing his plan fail, Snaky pulled out another explosive talisman and got to work, triggering explosion after explosion along the cliff, creating a landslide that eventually buried Chen Daoling under a mountain of rock and rubble. Snaky figured this would hold him off, but from beneath the rubble, Chen Daoling scoffed, irritated yet unfazed. "It's just rocks," he muttered to himself. "There's no way these can keep me down." But as he tried to use his earth traversal technique to escape, something went wrong. The rocks held firm, completely negating his power. Now, it was Chen Daoling's turn to panic. What kind of stone was this? Realizing he was trapped, Chen Daoling's frustration mounted. He never imagined a mere snake could force him into such a corner. With no other option, he pulled out an ancient divine berserk pill, a last resort treasure left behind by his ancestors. This pill would boost his power to the Foundation establishment level, but at a high cost. 20 years of his life would be shaved off instantly. With a resigned sigh, Chen Daoling swallowed the pill, feeling a surge of power ripple through him, elevating his strength to the Foundation establishment realm. He was like a maddened beast now, radiating a murderous aura with red glowing eyes and stark white hair. Fueled by his new strength, Chen Daoling blasted the rubble away, breaking free in an explosion of power. His fury had transformed him, and now he looked every bit like the vengeful spirit he had become, driven by hatred for Snaky. With a renewed sense of purpose, he activated his demonic energy compass, locking onto Snaky's energy with pinpoint accuracy. There was no escaping him now. With newfound speed, Chen Daoling soared into the sky, vowing to tear Snaky apart. "I swear, I will tear off your scales, rip out your tendons, and break every bone in your body," he bellowed. Meanwhile, Snaky felt Chen Daoling's terrifying presence getting closer, and his heart pounded in fear. How had Chen Daoling managed to escape? With a mix of panic and determination, Snaky sprinted toward a nearby river, hoping to dive in and hide. But just as he was about to enter the water, Chen Daoling unleashed a gravity technique, slamming Snaky to the ground with a force so intense it left him pinned. Snaky lay motionless, trapped under the immense weight of Chen Daoling's spell, unable to move. As Chen Daoling approached, he sneered down at Snaky, taking sadistic pleasure in seeing him so helpless. "What's wrong, little beast?" he taunted. "Why don't you try breaking free now? Maybe you should have thought twice before you killed my disciples." Snaky, though trapped, wasn't about to give up. He thought about all the unfairness of this situation. The snake catchers had started this by stealing his precious snake fruits. Yet here he was, on the brink of death. He reached into his storage pouch and pulled out his old golden scales, turning them into hidden weapons. With a swift flick, he launched the scales toward Chen Daoling. Chen Daoling's eyes widened in surprise. "In weapons? You really are a cunning creature," he muttered, but he wasn't worried. Activating his gravity technique, he tried to halt the scales midair. But to his shock, they kept coming, unaffected by his power. Forced to dodge, Chen Daoling barely avoided the attack, bewildered by the scales' unexpected strength. Taking advantage of this moment, Snaky activated his water traversal technique, diving into the river and disappearing into its depths. As he swam through the water, he reassured himself that the water traversal would give him an edge now that Chen Daoling had reached the Foundation establishment realm. But even as he put some distance between them, He couldn't help but worry. Where could he hide safely? He thought about the mountain temple. Maybe it could provide some shelter. The scene shifts to the mountain temple, where Snakey finds refuge within its ancient, shadowy walls. Not long after, Chun Dowling arrives, staring at the temple with pure frustration. He sneered at the ominous structure, trying to figure out why Snakey would choose such a dead-end place to hide. Could this cunning snake be setting a trap? Deciding not to risk entering, Chun Dowling stood outside and shouted, demanding Snakey come out and face him. Inside, Snakey whispered a desperate prayer to the mountain god, hoping for a miracle. He glanced around, wondering if he could hold out long enough to restore his energy. If the mountain god didn't intervene, he was ready to tear off his own golden scales and fight to the bitter end. But Chun Dowling's patience was running thin. With a sneer, he threatened to destroy the temple, and without hesitation, he hurled several explosive talismans at it. The resulting blast rocked the temple, collapsing it in an instant. As Snakey huddled amidst the rubble, his heart pounded with dread. Could Chun Dowling really be willing to defy the gods? Just as the dust began to settle, Snakey saw something stirring in the ruins. A dark, ominous figure formed from the shadows, looming over the debris. The air grew thick with tension as a booming voice echoed through the remains of the temple. The figure, radiating pure rage, spoke with thunderous authority. "Audacious fool! How dare you defile my statue and provoke my wrath?" As the black shadow loomed, Chun Dowling froze, dread creeping into every fiber of his being. Was this the rumored primordial spirit of an ancient monster? He couldn't handle something like this. His only thought? Run. But before he could act, his disciple arrived, calling out, ready to lend his strength. For a split second, Chun Dowling felt relieved. But then, with a cold calculation, he threw his disciple forward as a sacrifice, muttering an insincere apology under his breath. Without wasting a second, he fled, leaving his poor disciple to face the wrath of the black shadow alone. In an instant, the shadow's spirit consumed the disciple, leaving Chun Dowling scrambling for escape. As Chun Dowling sprinted away, he was in full survival mode, his thoughts racing. What was a powerful spirit like this doing here in these remote mountains? But he didn't get far before an intense pain struck his chest. He spat blood, clutching his heart as the shadow's voice thundered, warning him to never return unless he wanted his soul to be obliterated, forever ending any chance at reincarnation. Chun Dowling reeled at the thought, wondering just how powerful this spirit really was to reach him from afar. Though he vowed revenge, he knew he couldn't win against this thing. Not yet, anyway. Back at the temple ruins, Snakey was watching with a mix of relief and horror. With Chun Dowling gone and his disciple defeated, Snakey thought he was finally safe. But his relief quickly vanished as he saw the disciple's body twitch and start to rise. Was this guy playing dead? A chill ran through Snakey, and he started sweating. Before he could overthink it, he spit a fireball right at the reanimated body, incinerating it completely. Once the body was reduced to ashes, Snakey dropped to his belly, relieved and deeply grateful. He knelt before the crumbling temple and thanked the mountain god for his protection, promising to return and worship regularly. But just as he was pouring out his gratitude, the furious black spirit reappeared, shouting, "Worship? Don't flatter yourself, you clueless reptile." Snakey's relief turned to sheer terror as the spirit glared at him, ranting about his blunder. Apparently, Snakey had ruined some kind of grand plan, and the spirit was absolutely livid. Snakey tried to play it cool, but the black soul cut him off, barking orders at him to find a new body in 30 minutes, or he'd curse him with eternal death. Those words shook Snakey to his core. Eternal death? Never reincarnate? Yeah, he wasn't sticking around to find out. With a frantic nod, he slithered off in search of a perfect body. But the black soul wasn't going to settle for just any body. Nope, he wanted someone young, strong, and handsome, preferably with some cultivation skills. Snakey promised to find someone that would meet all those picky requirements, and the spirit could only hope he would actually deliver. In the meantime, his primordial spirit was fading fast. Desperate to hold on, the spirit spotted a passing forest rat and entered its body to buy some time. It was humiliating for such a powerful being to resort to a rodent, but he didn't have much choice. Sitting there in his rat form, he seethed with regret. Why had he ever bothered enlightening that wretched snake? He thought back to a few hundred years ago when he had barely escaped capture by the Great Sex, reduced to a spirit and forced to hide out in a mountain god statue. feeding off the faith of villagers to survive. Slowly, he'd gathered enough strength to possess other beings, just waiting for the right moment. And recently, he'd finally been ready to try again. But every time he was on the verge of possession, that meddling snake managed to ruin everything. When he'd set up a possession attempt with the help of a rare pill, Snakey had shown up and devoured the target, swallowing up part of his own primordial spirit. And just recently, he'd managed to possess a corpse, only to have it gobbled up by a stray dog that then developed intelligence from the spirit's residual energy. Snakey had unwittingly caused so much chaos, and the black spirit had reached his limit. Back in the present, the rat-possessed spirit waited, grumbling and cursing as he watched Snakey scouring the area. Snakey's search wasn't going well, though. All the bodies he found were just old skeletons, far from the young and handsome look the spirit wanted. Exhausted, Snakey was starting to panic. The clock was ticking, and that curse was starting to look dangerously close. Just then, he saw a fresh grave being dug nearby. Curious, he slithered over to investigate, spotting a dog digging up what appeared to be a freshly buried body. But something about this dog was different. Snakey noticed a demonic aura around it, as if it was possessed by some powerful spirit. The dog opened the coffin, revealing a strong, well-built body, exactly what Snakey had been looking for. But the dog noticed him too, and the two locked eyes in a strange, tense standoff. The dog, picking up on Snakey's intent, freaked out, thinking, is this snake actually planning to take my body? In a panic, the dog realized that Snakey wasn't after the corpse, but was eyeing him. Terrified, the dog turned tail, barking for help and calling Snakey a perverted demon snake for chasing him so relentlessly. But Snakey's eyes sparkled with excitement. Not only was this dog strong and good-looking in a demonic way, but he was intelligent too. This was it, the perfect vessel. Without hesitation, Snakey flung his beast-taming ring, catching the demon dog, who screamed, "No, please. I'm a person too." Snakey ignored the pleas, thinking, did this dog just insult me? But he noticed the strong energy surrounding the dog and realized he'd gained this aura from devouring corpses. The dog, now desperate, begged Snakey to spare him. But Snakey, with no patience for the dog's excuses, snapped back, telling him it wasn't Snakey he needed to worry about. It was the mountain god. Meanwhile, the spirit in his little rat body was feeling the pressure. The rat's weak form wasn't going to last long, and if Snakey didn't return soon, he'd lose what little grip he had left. Finally, just in time, Snakey arrived with the demon dog in tow. Proudly, Snakey presented his find, patting the dog's back and bragging that he was strong, young, and exactly what the spirit had ordered. For a moment, the spirit was speechless. Here he was, stuck in a rat, looking at this oversized demon dog, while the snake looked up at him with such a pleased expression. Snakey, sensing some hesitation, asked if it wasn't exactly what the spirit wanted. The spirit's patience snapped. He roared, furious that Snakey had brought back such a ridiculous option, and cursed the snake, wishing he would just die already. Snakey, panicking, stammered that he'd followed the instructions to the letter, wondering what he'd done wrong. But the spirit, realizing time was running out, had to make a desperate choice. He would rather possess a snake than a dog if it came down to it. And so, in this chaotic turn of events, he abandoned the rat and prepared to claim a new body, all while Snakey watched in stunned confusion. And with that, our wild saga ends for now. What's next for Snakey, the mountain god, and all these unfortunate souls caught up in the madness? If you're loving this epic adventure as much as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and stay tuned for more chaos to come.